Certainly, thank you for inviting me to be here today and to give me a chance to update you on the status of the digital transition. As mandated by Congress on February 17, 2009, all full-power television stations in the country will stop broadcasting analog and broadcast exclusively in digital. The DTV transition will provide television viewers with movie-quality picture and sound and potentially new programming choices. It will also allow us to significantly improve public safety communications and usher in a new era of advanced wireless services, such as the widespread deployment of wireless broadband. A successful DTV transition will depend upon minimizing the burdens placed on consumers and maximizing their ability to benefit from it. And now I'd like to update you on some of the recent regulatory actions and education efforts that we've been undergoing at the Commission. The broadcasters are making significant progress in converting their facilities to all digital. Almost 1,000 have completed construction and are providing full service to their viewers today. We have adopted the final DTV table of allotments, which provides over 99% of the television stations with their final digital channel. And we have adopted the technical procedures and rules to guide broadcasters through the end of the transition. Thanks to the staff's efficient processing of construction permits, last month we were able to begin accepting applications to expand the DTV service area 12 weeks ahead of schedule. The Commission's DTV-related enforcement efforts have focused on making sure consumers aren't taken advantage of during this transition. The Commission to date has inspected 3,992 retail stores and 37 websites. We have issued 361 citations for failing to comply with our labeling rules. And in the last 2 months, we released NALs against 9 retailers, totaling nearly $5 million. We released 3 NALs and 7 consent decrees for TVs with digital tuners that do not comply with the V-chip regulations, and settlements including payments totaling over $3.5 million in significant compliance measures. And finally, our field agents across the country have visited almost 935 stores and interviewed 842 store managers in over 34 states. To date, we have found that the majority of the store managers are well informed of the DTV transition and the NTIA Converter Box program. Our field agents follow up at these stores with information and tip sheets and conducting staff training sessions as they're needed. With a little less than 9 months to go, the industry and the Commission are actively reaching out to consumers to alert them of the coming transition and inform them about the steps they will need to take. I commend the industry for the consumer education campaign that they have initiated. The CEA, NAB, and apps have all reported significant increases in the percentage of consumers who are aware of the upcoming DTV transition, from around 40% in 2006 and the beginning of 2007 to almost 80% by January of this year. That more viewers are aware of the transition is a step in the right direction. Now we need to make sure we focus on making sure that they know what to do to prepare for that transition. A recent Consumers Union survey found that 64% of consumers were aware of the transition, but that 74% had major misconception about its impact on them. These surveys are useful in helping us identify how we need to focus our efforts and resources. I'll give you just a few statistics on the status of our education campaign, and more details are available in my written testimony. The Commission has conducted more than 1,000 DTV awareness sessions around the country, attended more than 200 conferences and events, had almost 100 partnership meetings, and made about 5,750 visits to various organizations around the country to disseminate DTV information. Almost 4 million pages of our DTV publications have been distributed to individual consumers and to consumer agencies and organizations. We've distributed 7,700 posters nationwide, and by next month we will be displaying DTV education posters in all 34,000 post offices across the country. The poster that we'll have in the post offices is it's on display in front of me. We've got the billboards that we're using across the country on display over here, and these are our tip sheets and fact sheets on display in front of me as well. We've also secured commitments from 36 states to display DTV materials in 1,100 Department of Motor Vehicle locations. The FCC's consumer outreach effort also recognizes that some consumers will be disproportionately impacted by the transition or are harder to reach than the general population. For instance, we have placed special emphasis on reaching seniors. Through the work of our field agents, we have distributed information to over 4,000 senior centers and almost 1,700 community centers. We have given nearly 900 presentations at these centers. And we're working closely with AARP and other senior organizations, presenting at their conferences and participating in interviews with their media. We are also taking extra steps to reach non-English speakers and minorities who disproportionately rely on over-the-air television. Most, if not all, of our DTV publications are available in Spanish. We've conducted 15 DTV awareness sessions, attended more than 21 conferences or events, had numerous partnership meetings, and made about 72 visits to various organizations, all specifically targeting the Hispanic population. We've partnered with Univision to educate its Spanish-speaking audiences, as Congresswoman Harman was mentioning. There are 200 planned town hall meetings that will take place over the next few months, and the FCC will be partnering with Univision to attend those. And the FCC is planning to participate in the upcoming conferences, including the Conference of the League of United Latin American Citizens, the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Annual Expo, and the National Council of La Raza's Conference. One step we have taken to target rural viewers has been to place DTV transition materials at state and county fairs throughout the country. We already have plans to disseminate the transition materials to 188 state and county fairs in 25 states. Now, earlier this year, my colleague, Commissioner Kopp, suggested that the Commission engage in a real-world experiment, readying broadcasters and consumers in advance of the upcoming digital transition. And last month, I announced that Wilmington, North Carolina would be the first market in the country to make the transition to digital television. The commercial broadcasters serving Wilmington have agreed to step up to this challenge. This test market will provide the FCC, NTIA, and other key stakeholders an opportunity to assess the effectiveness of our outreach and technical efforts. We will have ample time to modify these efforts based on the lessons learned in advance of the February national transition. To prepare the Wilmington consumers, we have exhibited at over 100 events. We have partnered with 70 local organizations to distribute our materials, and over 32,000 publications have been distributed to consumers. We've created and distributed radio PSAs and displayed 4 billboards at high-traffic areas. And we've created a dedicated website and tailored posters and FCC publications specifically to the Wilmington, North Carolina market. And since the FCC made its announcement, household coupon demand in Wilmington has increased by 78%, and that compares to a 22% increase for the country as a whole. In conclusion, the Commission is devoting significant resources to facilitating a smooth transition. Nearly every bureau and office at the Commission has been involved in this effort, including our field offices throughout the country. We intend to take whatever actions are necessary to minimize the potential burden the DTV transition could impose on consumers and maximize their ability to benefit from it. The next 3 months for the Wilmington, North Carolina, and 9 months for the rest of the country will undoubtedly be challenging. Nevertheless, it's my hope that through the combined efforts of the government, industry, and advocacy groups, the American consumers will ultimately reap the rewards that the digital transition has to offer. Thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Now we're going to hear from Bernadette McGuire Rivera, who is the Associate Administrator of the National Telecommunications Administration, and she's here to speak about the redemption rates of the DTV Converter Box program. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Markey, Ranking Member Stearns, and members of the subcommittee.
If you could turn on your microphone, please.
I appreciate the opportunity to testify today about the progress of the TV Converter Box coupon program. When Acting Assistant Secretary Baker appeared before the subcommittee in February, we were off to a very strong start. Now, in its 6-month, interest in the coupon program remains very high. As many of you have noted, we have received 8.5 million requests for 16 million coupons. Requests are now averaging approximately 104,000 a day. Half of the requesting households say they rely exclusively on over-the-air television. An initial backlog due to high demand has been eliminated, and now all coupons are processed timely and are mailed within 10 to 15 days after we receive the request. NTI recognizes the committee and everyone interested in the coupon program was interested in the redemption rates. That really is our big news for this week. The first 800,000 coupons expired, and of those, 42% had been used. I want to caution everyone, though, that this is a very small sample. The first 800 really came in the first few days, many of those in the wee hours of New Year's Day. And I have a funny feeling almost everybody in this room was in that first day's order. So these consumers may be a little different. We will be updating this data. We have estimated that by July 1st, 3.5 million coupons will have completed the full cycle. And by that time, we should have a very robust estimate of what redemption will actually be. But we will keep the committee up to date on redemption data as we get it and as we begin to analyze it. Now, all of the progress we've made to date is tied directly to the voluntary participation of NTIA's partners in private industry, in the nonprofit sector, and in government. Thanks to the consumer electronics manufacturers, certified converter boxes are widely available. NTIA has certified 87 models, 21 have the analog pass-through capability. The retailers on the next panel will talk to you about, we're getting those into the stores. To date, 3 million, as of today, 3 million boxes have been purchased using a coupon. And as you noted, people seem to be very happy with the performance of the boxes. Thanks to our 1,800 participating electronics retailers, we have 19,000 stores where boxes are available. This includes 7 of the largest consumer electronics chains, hundreds of regional retailers, and smaller local stores. The program has retailers in all 50 states, in every DMA, as well as Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Consumers can also order from 19 online retailers or call one of 7 telephone retailers. Manufacturing organizations such as CEA and CERC continue to be very helpful in providing information to consumers about how to use the boxes and helping the program. Consumer education is our #1 priority, both for NTIA and the Commerce Department. Secretary Gutierrez and Acting Secretary Baker regularly make public appearances, give press interviews, and work closely with staff in planning and execution of the program. In this next phase of our program, we want to move from just awareness to awareness and action. Our message, which should be at the end of this week on the front of the Commerce Department, is experience the benefits. We right now want people to not only know about the coupon program, order the coupon, but go out and buy the box, because right now the majority of people can experience a much better television picture with the box. But also our motivation behind that is we don't want to rush at the end of the year. It's important that people now start to buy the boxes, get them in place, so we do not have people coming in waiting until February 1st to get their boxes. The level of consumer participation, I think, is very strong evidence in the coupon orders that the program is working. We now have 272 nonprofit partners that are very helpful in spreading the word about the coupon program. We specifically look for partners that have close ties to the vulnerable populations. For example, AARP, the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, the American Council of the Blind, Goodwill Industries, the National Council of La Raza, the National Congress of American Indians, and the National Grange. Now, seniors, of course, are a very important audience. We are conducting the rulemaking to make residents of nursing homes and other senior facilities available, make them eligible for coupons. That comment period closed last night, and you have our commitment that we will work as quickly as possible to complete this rulemaking. We're also keenly aware of the need to reach out to communities where the primary language may not be English. All of our materials are available in both English and Spanish, and we have 150 different languages that are available for people to order coupons with at the call center. About 40% of all the calls going into the call center right now are in Spanish. We are working very closely with Univision, Telemundo. We will be going to La Raza and doing a special event with Univision, and I reinforce that these groups have done a terrific job, and every time Univision does anything, we know to have that call center doubled up, because they really generate the calls. We also participated in the beginning of the month with the Congressional Tri-Caucus meeting that was put together by Representative Solis, which focused on the needs of Black, Latino, and Asian Pacific Americans. NAB, NCTA, and the media industries really have been outstanding partners. Every day, television stations and cable channels across the country carry public service announcements about the coupon program, and we believe they have a lot to do with our 104,000 calls a day. NTIA has also been working with other federal agencies to educate vulnerable populations. For example, the Veterans Administration, the USDA's Food Stamp Program, and HHS's Office of Community Service are all including information about the coupon program in publications and mailings to their constituencies. We also are working with the Post Office to place coupon applications in all the post offices. Of course, one of our most important government partners is the FCC, and we will be collaborating very closely with the Commission.
If you could summarize, please.
Okay. We will be in Wilmington. We have adopted all our materials for Wilmington. In fact, we will be going down there tonight to do some special work on the seniors and the nursing homes. In closing, I want to remind you, if you want to learn more about it, the box and the materials are in the Rayburn cafeteria. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. And our next witness is Mark Goldstein, who was the Director of Physical Infrastructure Issues from the GAO. He is here today to speak about the recent GAO report about broadcasters' preparedness for the DTV transition. We welcome you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss our recently issued report on technical issues arising from the digital television transition and our work on the extent of consumer awareness about the transition. My comments are based on our work on the transition completed for this subcommittee, and we are continuing to review public and private sector efforts underway to implement the transition and plan to report on those issues later this year. In my testimony today, I will discuss 1, the progress of full-power broadcast stations have made in transitioning to digital, as well as the technical and coordination issues they face. 2, issues pertaining to low-power television stations and how they affect consumers. And 3, the extent to which American households are aware of the DTV transition and likely to utilize a converter box subsidy program. In summary, first, broadcasters have made significant progress in preparing for the DTV transition. Many stations are already broadcasting their digital signal in full power, with the only step remaining to turn off their analog signal. Specifically, as of the end of February 2008, 91% of broadcasters responding to our survey reported that they were already transmitting a digital signal. 9% of stations responding to our survey had yet to begin broadcasting a digital signal, but almost all of those stations expect to be broadcasting digitally by February 17, 2009. In finalizing the transition to digital, some stations must still resolve technical, coordination, and construction issues. Technical issues include relocating either digital or analog antennas, and in some cases constructing new broadcast towers. Some stations are bound by financial constraints related to the cost of resolving these issues. In fact, at the time of our survey, 69 stations indicated they have yet to start construction on their final digital facilities due to financial constraints. In addition, some stations have outstanding coordination issues, such as the U.S. government reaching agreements with the Canadian and Mexican governments regarding signal interference issues and coordination with cable providers and satellite companies. Second, since most low-power stations do not plan to transition to digital by February 2009, it is possible for some viewers to receive programming in analog and digital after the transition date. Potentially millions of viewers can receive low-power analog transmissions, including programming from the major networks, Spanish-language broadcasting, and public television. To have access to both analog and digital television signals after the DTV transition, viewers could purchase a special kind of converter box that passes through an analog signal and a digital signal, often referred to as analog pass-through, or purchase other equipment. Currently, converter boxes with analog pass-through are available for purchase online and at 2 national retailers. Public and private stakeholders have taken steps to educate the public about the low-power broadcast, potentially remaining in analog and options available to consumers, but some advocacy groups and others have expressed concerns that the messages intending to explain the low-power issue are instead confusing the public. Further complicating matters, many consumers do not know the difference between full-power and low-power stations or whether the signals they receive are full or low power. Finally, according to our consumer survey results, most households will be unaffected by the DTV transition, and a vast majority have heard of the transition. While about 84% of people have heard of the transition, a smaller number of people have more specific knowledge of the transition date and why the transition is taking place. Those at higher risk of being affected by the transition, households viewing over-the-air television signals, have higher levels of awareness than those who will be unaffected. Over half of households have heard of the converter box subsidy program, and those households at risk of losing television service who plan to take action reported they are likely to utilize the program. However, only a third of those indicating plans to purchase boxes and utilize the coupons reported knowing how to obtain coupons. While general awareness of the DTV transition is high, there are indications that some consumers are confused or unknowledgeable about the transition, as 45% of those households who are at risk plan no action or inadequate action to prepare for the transition. And among those unaffected by the transition, 30% indicated they have plans to ready themselves for the transition, despite the fact that no action will be required of them to maintain service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my statement. I'll be pleased to answer any questions that you or members of the subcommittee have.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein, very much, and we thank the panel. And the chair now recognizes himself for a round of questions. So we're going to begin with you, Dr. McGuire-Rivera. In your testimony, you state, quote, "As distributed but unredeemed coupons expire, funds otherwise obligated to those coupons will be returned to the coupon program. The program currently has limited administrative funds to distribute additional numbers of coupons that might be issued for the returned funds. The program is carefully watching its administrative funding limits so that it can distribute as many coupons as possible. This sounds like money might be returned to the pool so that additional eligible consumers apply and obtain needed converter boxes, but that a lack of administrative funds might prevent the program from mailing them out to the people in America that need these converter boxes. So please explain. There sounds like there could be a big problem here.
Well, when we asked for the contingent funds, one of the reasons we asked for it is we thought not so much that you would need money for coupons, but that we could in fact need money for administration due to changes that we're going to be making in the program from the rulemakings, and because there's going to be a lot of recycling. And I think when the administrative funds were established, there was never enough money for endless recycling of the coupons. And
so is this potentially a big problem, that you won't have the funding?
I would say it'd be a mid-sized problem.
A mid-sized problem might entail having 1 million people not be able to make the conversion. I'm wondering how do you define mid-size? Do you need more administrative funds, in other words, or does IBM need to do something here? Tell us what the solution is.
Well, the funds would go to IBM.
So what do you need us to do?
We need you to work with us as we figure out what's actually going on with the redemption rates and with the demand rates. If demand stays high and redemption stays where it is, about 30 to 40%, it looks like we will be able to redistribute more coupons than we ordinarily thought, and so we would have to get more money, basically to buy more stamps to send out coupons.
Okay, so you're going to need more money, though. Is that what you're saying?
Possibly for stamps.
Possibly stamps. Okay. So we won't think of that as money. We'll just think of that. But there is a price on that.
There is a price on, yes.
Okay. And you'll pay for those stamps with money, maybe.
We will need money.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Goldstein, what data point in the initial survey results would you highlight as particularly concerning to you?
I think there are several. We think there's a fair amount of confusion still out there, as I indicated. Number one, of the roughly 45% of the households that are in the high-risk group do not plan to take action. They seem to be unprepared to know what it is they need to do in terms of getting a converter box or a coupon. Of those who do understand what the program is and that they need to take some action, 100% of them said that they would actually redeem a coupon. But there are other confusion points as well. As you indicated in your opening statement, 30% of households that are in the low-risk group that really don't have to take any action at all still plan to take action to get a converter box, and therefore might also get a coupon and therefore be a drain on the Treasury. There are a number of sort of anomalies and a lot of confusion still out there that have to be addressed.
Let me ask you this. I think we heard from Dr. McGuire-Rivera that 40% of the calls coming into the call center are in Spanish. Can you talk about that issue and how well the program is working in terms of addressing that community?
We didn't specifically look for this particular report at those issues. We are doing some ongoing work now to continue to look at the consumer education.
Could you do me a favor, Mr. Goldstein? Could you put aside a special, focus on that issue of how the Hispanic community is going to ultimately be dealt with this program? If 40% of the calls coming in to the call center are in Spanish, there's obviously an issue here. Because it only represents maybe 10 or 11% of our population. So to the extent to which something is popping out like that, I would appreciate if GAO would focus on it. And if I can come back to you, Chairman Martin, how do you respond to these concerns that are being raised here at NTIA in terms of its administrative funding and over here with regard to the awareness, but yet these gaps that exist in terms of individuals' response?
Well, I certainly support NTIA if they need an extra administrative funding to be able to mail out the coupons. Then I think that that's a critical thing that we'll need to make sure everyone is to take advantage of the coupon program. I think that the Hispanic and Spanish-speaking homes are twice as likely to not subscribe to cable or satellite, so they're a particularly at-risk population. It's even more. The potential problem is compounded by the fact that it's even harder to get the message out to them. I think that's one of the reasons why they've been certainly one of our top target groups. And I think that what we need to do is continue to try to work with the organizations who understand how to get a message out at a grassroots level to them. We have, I think, both NTIA and the Commission translated all of our information so that it's available in Spanish, but really trying to work at the grassroots level, like what we're doing with Univision for town hall meetings, like what we're doing with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for town hall meetings in cities with high Spanish-speaking populations. I think is going to be critical to make sure that they understand this transition is going to impact them as well.
Okay, thank you. My time has expired. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. McGuire-Rivera, I just want to clarify a little what Chairman Markey mentioned. If you get access to the second set of funds that, in fact, have been allocated through Congress and made available to you, as the statute has stipulated, will then you have enough money for the administrative expenses and coupons?
We are being very cautionary
Can you
about that.
bring your mic a little closer?
Okay.
Just a little closer.
We're being very cautious about that because we may, in fact, need a little bit more to continue to recycle coupons. And it also, we won't really have a firm answer on that until we get a better sense of what it's going to cost to do the rulemaking changes.
Yeah.
So we may we may not. I don't think it's a huge alarm at this point, but I also don't want to be in a situation where we would come back to you in July and surprise you.
Yeah, but we've allocated $60 million additional money for you. Do you think you'll need more than that? Additional, if we give you access to that fund, do you suspect you'll need more than $60 million?
We could, depending on the redemption rates.
Give me a worst-case scenario. How much more money will you need?
I really couldn't give you that number right now.
Okay.
I mean, we'll get back to you and provide you more detail. We have done studies of how the coupons would cycle through, and I'd be happy to have the people who worked on that sit down with the staff and go through that.
Is it possible that the administrative charges could be more efficiently implemented so that you wouldn't need more than the 60
Well, we're looking at that too. I mean, my
I think
preference
you should look at that too at this early stage.
No, my preference would be not to have to ask for money, quite frankly.
Okay. Chairman Martin, thank you for being here, and let me compliment you again, as I did an opening statement for this demonstration. Just quickly, how do you feel about the demonstration? Do you think there's going to be any problem, or are you going to take heat for something that's a great idea that didn't work perfectly when you're actually just...
I'm anxious
we all suspect there's going to be problems, so that's why we're doing a demonstration.
I mean, I'm anxious about the both the experiment in Wilmington and about the ultimate transition. I think both of them face the same kind of challenges of making sure that we've informed everyone as to the maximum extent possible and that we've gotten everyone as prepared as possible. So I'm anxious about both. But I do think that we'll be able to take and learn some important lessons about what's most effective in educating consumers, and also some of the technical questions that have been asked about things like the antenna reach. The power, the reach of the new digital broadcast stations, and whether people need new antennas or not. I think both of those will be able to be informed by the experiment that we're undergoing. So sure, I'm anxious about them, but I think it's an important effort.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you're looking for another city after Wilmington, North Carolina, you can go to Jacksonville, Florida. It's a little larger city, but I think they'd be willing to take that opportunity too.
You know, we actually, I believe there were 7 or 8 markets we identified as being prepared, and we actually contacted them, and we actually contacted several markets in Florida. I'd be happy to share that with you. I think Jacksonville may have been one of them, but
yeah.
There was actually no other market that was willing to at the time. But we'd be happy to work with you if we can get them to go through it as well. We'd be happy to.
Okay, well, I'll contact them. I have a little longer question. It's I'm glad you pulled the AWS 3 item from tomorrow's FCC open meeting. I think I'm concerned that you're perhaps moving down a path that is similar to what I talked about with the 700 megahertz auction. I think at least the people I've talked to acknowledge that by conditioning some of the 700 megahertz spectrum largely on a business model, and many of us think these business models were implemented or proposed by Google and Frontline, and I think you decrease the revenue by doing that as much as $10 billion, and perhaps hurt our goal of finding a private partner to build out a public safety network on the spectrum cleared by the DTV legislation. As we predicted in our letter, that at that time, Chairman Barton, or Mr. Barton of Texas, the ranking member on our committee, sent to you, in which I signed. In the AWS-3 auction, you are once again considering conditions largely tailored to one business model, this time as proposed by M2Z. We don't think this is necessarily appropriate. It sets up winners and losers. It will reduce revenue. What we need to do is to help build out a public safety network, especially if the D block re-auction fails again. So I guess the question is, do you agree? If you do, will you commit to move on the AWS-3 spectrum until we, will you commit not to move on the AWS-3 spectrum until we see what happens in the D block re-auction?
I think that in the last few years we have made significant strides in broadband deployment, but I do think we also should recognize that there's additional things we can end up doing to try to make sure we're facilitating a broadband availability and broadband affordability to people throughout the country. I think that to the extent that there were companies that were willing to bid on and offer a broadband service in this spectrum and at the same time reserve a piece of that spectrum to offer free broadband throughout the country, I think that would have a significant public interest benefit and be able to be a lifeline broadband service. It would be at slower speeds than you might be able to get otherwise. It would be more like the dial-up speeds in the, probably of today in comparison to what the commercial providers will be offering. But I think if someone was willing to make that kind of a commitment as part of their going forward, I think that's a significant public interest benefit that I think the Commission should take into account. I think it's also important to recognize that while the people who are proposing that as their that we should include that as a condition, that's being opposed by the traditional industry players, but the traditional industry players are actually wanting us to encumber the spectrum in other ways that actually make it just conducive to their business model. They want us to put certain power limits on it and make it just basically available only for one-way distribution of service, so the only people that would be able to really take advantage of the AWS spectrum would be whoever owned the spectrum right next door in that geographic area, so whoever owned the frequency right next door. They really want it to be reserved to be able to offer mobile video services, the kind of media flow Qualcomm kind of services. That's, so I think that you've got the traditional industry players are also advocating that basically we only have one business model for this piece of spectrum. I think the business model that we should be advocating is trying to take into account some kind of a lifeline broadband service for consumers. I think that is important, and I continue to believe that's an important policy.
Gentleman's time has expired. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from San Antonio, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, I commend you for keeping on top of the situation, because I think we really need to be prepared for what I anticipate will be the real avalanche of activity as we move closer to February 17, 2009. And if any of the witnesses disagree with me, that in a minute I would like your opinion as to why you think this situation is not going to get worse before it gets better. Dr. McGuire-Rivera, you indicated that 42% of the first 800,000 or so of the coupons had been redeemed, less than half. Mm-hmm. And so I want you to kind of walk me through this, because my understanding is we're having difficulty stocking some of these converters, especially the pass-through converters, let's say in San Antonio, where I have one of my local grocery store chains, H-E-B, which has a huge presence in Central and South Texas. H-E-B alone has sold nearly 19,000 converter boxes. This is a quote, about 100 boxes will arrive at the store on Sunday afternoon, and by Monday afternoon they are gone. Now, they're only selling analog pass-through boxes for the obvious reasons in our area, and I really do commend them. The other thing that I want to also point out to you, and I point this out at every hearing, the one thing that all these households have in common is electricity. So we have our municipally owned utility company. It's my understanding at this point that they will be providing inserts in the monthly billings. So we will be getting to those households probably like no other communication will be getting to those households. And so I'm strongly encouraging these partnerships. I have no idea if we have other areas that are doing this. The avalanche of activity is going to be real obvious. If we only have half of those that you've already granted the coupons, you can imagine what's going to happen. People procrastinate. This is human nature. So even those that have applied, have the coupons, aren't acting. Can you imagine the activity come November, December, and January? So you should be prepared, and I don't want you to be hedging that you're going to utilize additional funds and maybe even requesting others. Walk me through this particular scenario. We don't have analog pass-through boxes available like we should. People are behind. They're waiting the coupons to expire. And I think Mr. Stearns may have referred to this. I'm not real sure if this is what he was describing. I'm just looking at the timing of redemption. And so they go to the retailer. They don't have the box. They come back. They still don't have the box. Can the retailer accept the coupon, which I believe is a card or whatever? Do they go ahead and swipe that at that point in time, even though they don't have a box, but they will in the future deliver the box? And do they then get credit and reimbursement for merchandise which has not been delivered? Or do they wait until they have the box, which may go beyond the expiration date? What do we do in those circumstances? How do you understand it? Let's start off with the proposition, when do they swipe the coupon card?
Okay, I'm glad you asked this question because this is an issue and there are some very important problems associated with this. At this point, we encourage a retailer to create a, quote, waiting list. We would prefer that they not swipe the card or ask for their $40 from the government until a box is actually available in stock. And I'll tell you why. As Representative Stupak talked about a vendor mysteriously disappearing from the list, we have had to pull about a dozen bad apples out of the barrel. And these were retailers that were decertified for essentially doing this, taking a coupon, swiping it, essentially taking the consumer captive. These boxes never appeared. As we looked into it, it was clear the boxes are never going to appear.
All right, so your answer is you don't swipe that until you have the box in hand and you deliver.
We prefer that they not swipe until they have a box in hand, and certainly we do not want the government to give somebody $40 for a box that never...
And that makes perfect sense, and we'd probably be all over you if you were doing it otherwise. The problem in the practical application is that we don't have the boxes available in those locations where that are being frequented and the redemption is really taking place, and may not be Radio Shack or Best Buy in San Antonio or in South Texas. That is a very real concern. The other thing is those individuals whose coupons have expired, they cannot reapply. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So they've lost their chances. Now, I have a sense that that's probably not going to happen throughout. I mean, I think if we have 58% of 800,000 that did not, they are now ineligible for any kind of governmental assistance. And not real sure that's going to play out all the way through the 17th of February. I mean, I think we're going to run into some real serious problems. Chairman Martin, the other issue, I think we're going to have the avalanche of activity. If y'all disagree, tell me that it's only going to lessen in number and scope as we go along the process. There is the other issue, and if I can find my newspaper article that I wanted to read, from which I wanted to read, and that was regarding the quality of the signal and the other problem that we're going to have. And this is from a May 20th, 2008, Washington Post story by Kim Hart. And you're very familiar because I believe that you may be cited, that you're cited here. What new digital audiences have to fear is the digital cliff, or the all-or-nothing quality of digital reception. The picture is excellent until the signal weakens or is interrupted, causing the picture to disappear, and it is more sensitive to interference from hills, trees, buildings, and bad weather than traditional analog reception. An analog picture degrades gradually, getting more static and snow as signals weaken. Then we have a quote, consumer advocates say the federal agencies in charge of the digital transition have not informed consumers of potential reception gaps which will cause more frustration when the switch happens. What is of great concern to me is a quote from Mr. Odette Benoff, who is president of TV Transmission Antenna Group, who said that about half of the viewers who now receive analog channels will not reliably receive all of their digital replacements, and that viewers more than 40 miles from a broadcast tower would probably need new equipment. Now, I do want to concentrate on the avalanche of activity, don't get me wrong, but then we're going to have this secondary issue that is going to be huge once people do get the converter boxes, and we're trying to respond to these complaints. And I would like your views and comments regarding this particular story.
Well, first I would say that our engineers estimate that there will only be about 5% of the population that would currently be able to receive the analog signals who might be adversely impacted by that digital by the transition to a digital signal. So it's not nearly the percentage they're talking about in that article, and that then even then of those 5%, it would only be that percentage of the population that doesn't subscribe to cable or satellite. So it would really be somewhere closer to 15% of 5% or less than 1% of the people who would be adversely impacted. The other, when you refer to the Kim Hart article that you did, if you actually go back and look at the hard copy of that article, the picture that was associated with it, with the describing the person who was not able to receive their signal, his antenna is covered with tinfoil. And the reason why their antenna is covered with tinfoil is probably because they really couldn't receive very well the analog signal. When you're talking about the impact of the digital transition, you have to compare what their analog signal is today to what their digital signal will be tomorrow using the same antenna. Many of the studies that estimate, for example, the Centris study, that estimates they will have a much more significant impact, change antennas in the middle of the study. They say if there's a rooftop antenna with receiving an analog signal, and if you take a rabbit-ear type of antenna and put it on the roof, what will be the impact? Well, of course, if you change antennas in the middle of the study, a significantly less number of viewers will be able to watch television. But our engineers do not estimate that it will be like that. And if you go back and look at the picture in that article, you can see the tinfoil covering that antenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I appreciate the testimony of all of our witnesses, and would have to say that every member on this subcommittee certainly knows something about customer relations as we deal with the 650,000 people that we represent, and as we try to walk them through issues, particularly on casework, where they might feel wronged, and we try and lend a helping hand to correct things. And I'm just interested, Dr. McGuire-Rivera, about how are the consumers themselves feeling about the process? What type of feedback have you heard from folks that are using the coupon? Have things gone relatively smoothly? Have you had a number of major inquiries from the retailers or the customers saying that the system is broken, needs to be fixed? Are folks generally happy? Is it working fairly well? What is what is the happy quotient here?
I think the happy quotient is pretty good. When they call us, of course, they're not calling us to tell us they're happy, but we really get very few complaints, and a lot of the consumer problems, frankly, that get funneled to us get funneled through your offices. Thank you very much, though. So I would say, while we do get some complaints, I think we had about 100 complaints call into us over a 2-month period, and considering we're getting 104,000 coupon requests a day,
That's
the
good.
happy quotient is pretty good, and we're doing everything we can to take care of the consumer complaints.
Now, those 100 complaints or so that you've gotten, are they more on the retailer end, that they don't have the right box or I don't know how to hook it up?
No, most of them really, when they call us, they either had some problems with getting their application through. Basically, we do not get a lot complaining about the box.
Now, what happens to someone that applied for that coupon early and for whatever reason didn't go to the retailer, or perhaps the retailer didn't have a box, but let's say they didn't go and the coupon is expired and they said, well, this is my opportunity now to go, and gosh, maybe I wasn't aware that it was going to expire and I wouldn't have the chance to reapply for another coupon. Have you received any calls or complaints from folks that might be a little angry about that? Or?
We get a few, but there's not a groundswell of that.
And how many of those are there, of the 100 or so?
Of the 100 or so, 20 probably.
And is there a routine or a standard that you go through the folks? And
at this point, we are not allowing reissues. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that we really are pushing for people to buy their boxes now. I think if we told people now, oh, if you forgot to use your coupon, that doesn't matter because we will get you another coupon. First, the cost of reissuing coupons, I can't give you an exact dollar figure, but I can guarantee you it's breathtaking because we have talked to IBM about that. But it's very important that people get out there now and not wait until February, and allowing a reissue would have a backup in January and February that I think would create probably more problems than what we're trying to solve with the reissue. We are looking at it, but right now we are holding back on saying whether or not we would reissue a coupon.
Mr. Martin and Mr. Goldstein, I don't know if you looked at this at all, but of the folks that will require a new box or a box to be able to get a signal, do we know what percentage of those folks have decided instead of going to look for to make application for the card and go to a retailer, how many folks in terms of numbers would actually say, well, maybe this is the time to sign up for cable or satellite and just forget this rabbit ears thing? Do we have any estimate in terms of the migration from folks into those two services?
We don't yet. I mean, we know approximately how many households today do not subscribe to cable or satellite. You know, it's about 15%, but we don't know. We haven't seen any change in that, but we'll be on the lookout for it as we go forward. But we don't have any estimates of that yet.
And Mr. Goldstein, did you, when you did your study, I know it was done the end of February, so it was a little bit earlier before the word really got out. But
that's right. This particular edition of the survey, we did not ask that question. It's a very good question, though.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, gentleman's time has expired. You just used the word breathtaking in terms of the amount of money it would cost?
For reissue, yes, sir.
To reissue? What's a number next to the word breathtaking?
Maybe 2 or 3 times what it costs to do an average coupon because you have to go in and rebuild the system.
Very interesting. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Eshoo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McGuire-Rivera, given the last line of questioning and the number of people that have participated and what you said earlier about having to request more money, at what point will NTIA make an assessment that there's some trigger mechanism to have this occur?
My
if
estimate
people
is
have
that we will
coupons
know.
and they're not,
We will know. I'm pretty sure we have firm
expiring.
figures in July. I mean, this
In
is
July?
not something that we're going to be coming back to you, you know, in November.
don't come back in
We're
August because we
we're
won't
working
be here.
on
So,
this now. So
and I wouldn't wait until September. So
Now, during the summer, I think all of us will have worked through this. We're working very closely with IBM on what we can do to make changes in the system. I believe, you know, at the last hearing, they said everything is everything is technically possible, but there is a cost both in terms of time and money at this point in the program. So we are considering everything. We will work with you to make sure that we can make as many consumers happy as we can.
I don't recall the rationale for setting up the coupons to expire and some of the downsides that have been pointed out to that. What was the rationale for setting it up that way?
It's statutory. It was in the statute. I don't pretend to speak for the Congress, but I have a feeling that it was set up along with the early start in January to move people through the process of getting coupons and getting boxes and being ready long before February 17th, 2009.
And can you remind us how many have applied for a coupon and the coupons have expired because they haven't gotten the goods? Do you have any sense of that, or does GAO
Well, we know that we have 800,000 that have expired, and so there would be, my math is not so good anymore, 58% of those people decided not to use the coupon for one reason or another.
I see. Chairman Martin, there's been a lot of news on the AWS 3 auction and the rules that are on circulation at the Commission, and our colleague from Florida made mention of it. I'd like to point out a couple of things here, and that is that 70% of the spectrum, the 700 megawatts auction, went to two companies. Two, not 20. Verizon and AT&T. And I think that what it points out is that we need competition. We need real competition. In order for broadband to be broad and deep and pervasive in the country, I think that we need competition. So my only question to you is, when do you expect the rules to be voted on at the Commission?
Well, I had originally put them on for the vote for tomorrow's meeting. Some of the commissioners continue to have some questions about it, so I would like to move forward with that in July. I think it's important for us to try to move forward and put that put the spectrum out and available. And I would like to try to move forward in July, assuming I can get support of at least a majority of the commission. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's good news for the country. To the chairman again, do you think that broadcasters? I made a statement about what broadcasters had promised, and in my view, the promise that they made is really an overstatement of their vision of how broadcasting would change after the digital transition. Do you think that they overstated their vision?
Well, I certainly think that our policies haven't, as a total, and we haven't encouraged the broadcasters to take full advantage of the multicasting opportunities. If you look at the transition and what's occurred abroad, in the Berlin example, that GAO had done a study on originally, and that when we focused on some of the lessons learned from there, one of the significant benefits from the consumer perspective was broadcasters beginning to do multicasting, and that would mean that consumers, even without buying a new TV, if they just got a converter box, would be able to receive multiple channels. I think that was the emphasis, or our lack of emphasis, on trying to facilitate multicasting. I think it hasn't achieved all of the potential benefits from the consumer perspective.
Are you open to examining public interest obligations relative to licenses?
Well, I think that the Commission has taken steps on the public interest obligations in general. I mean, so I certainly am open to it. We adopted new rules last fall about the enhanced disclosure of exactly what they were doing from a local public affairs programming. We actually adopted an NPRM that said we were going to require them to do more local content and a certain significant amount of local public affairs content.
That's tied to their licenses?
That would be tied to their licenses. That's been very controversial. There's many members of Congress who've written me of opposing that, but I've said that I thought that we should have some minimum amount of localism that they should be required to do. I'm concerned. I would say that the one area that concerns me is when you talk about getting into election law or free time for candidates. That's been very controversial. I was at the Commission when the Commission actually talked about doing that before. There were many members of Congress very upset about that, including the chairman of this committee at the time. But certainly on the localism front, I've been open to reopening that issue.
Thank you.
Lady's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Walden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. One, following up Dr. McGuire-Rivera about this notion of retailers swiping the card but not having the boxes. Do you have regulatory authority to prohibit that by rule?
I don't believe we do.
Would you like that authority? I mean, it's kind of a swipe and run.
Secretary Bate, but I would. It wouldn't hurt.
All right, if you could, because that troubles me that somebody might.
I also want to know that this is not a huge problem. That the vast majority of the retailers are.
Right. So it shouldn't be a problem to them.
Great citizens, but there are a small number.
That's always the issue. It's that 10 or 5% that cause bad name for everybody. But it just seems like if you're going to hold, if they're able to hold that constituent consumer hostage. And not deliver, that's not fair either. And perhaps it's a rule that says if the consumer can go back and unswipe or something. I don't know how the technology works, but they ought to be able to be freed from their bondage from a retailer who's not participating properly. I want to follow up, too, on the issue of translators. I have a very rural district, lots of mountains and hills. And Chairman Martin and Mr. Goldstein, perhaps you can talk about any issues you're seeing out there. A lot of the viewers of television in Oregon, and rural Oregon especially, rely on translators. Can you give me an assurance that on February 17, 2009, they're still going to be able to get a signal the way they are today? And if not, why, and what do we need to do about it?
Well, as you even mentioned in your opening statement, I think the low power issues and the translator issues were something that and the fact that there were some initially some of the boxes did not have that capability, and actually all of the boxes didn't have the capability, is a significant problem. There are certainly about, I think the estimate is around 24 boxes or almost 24 boxes that now have that pass-through capability.
Good.
It'll be important for consumers in your areas to make sure they're getting the pass-through boxes. So
Because they'll need that to receive
they'll need that in order
translators?
to still receive those analog signals. Now, we are working with both the translators and with the low power community to try to put forth rules that say how are they going to make the transition. As you know, they're allowed to transition over to digital, but they're not required to. The Commission does need to start focusing on the rules and the requirements for making sure that they move into the digital era as well. But that'll take several years to ultimately require them to do that. But I think that's so we are making some progress on the box front.
So there is going to still be analog broadcasting going on via translator signals.
Translators, all of the forms of low power television, which includes the translators.
And that includes translators. And given the concern raised by my colleague from Texas, Mr. Gonzalez, about the way digital just drops off, with an analog signal, you can continue to get it even when it's not good. I mean, you get the ghosting and the shadowing and everything else. With digital, you either have it or you don't, right?
That's right.
And so have your certified smart engineers done studies to indicate where people are going to have problems and where they're not, digital versus analog, especially in this environment?
Well, they have. That's why they've come up with it. It should impact, less than 1% of the people. It's about 5% of the population. But of course, then the
why do I
question
think they're all going to be
of
in
those
my
5%?
district?
Which ones subscribe to cable? But I think those are just the best engineering estimates from our models.
Right.
We are one of the benefits of the Wilmington transition is we'll be able to actually go and make sure that we understand the full impact of the transition from analog to digital. We have engineers actually down there now, and we will to be able to study that exactly.
And Mr. Chairman, if your engineers have any of those sorts of shadowy maps or whatever they call them in the digital environment for Oregon, for example, that'd be really helpful for me to see. I'd be curious to know where the calls are going to start coming from.
Well, I have asked the engineers to try to put together those kind of maps that we'd be able to be prepared and provide to everyone. So I've already asked them to start trying to study that. I think we do want to make sure we understand the exact technical parameters, and I think Wilmington will help us do that. But we'll provide that information.
All right, Doctor, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to note we have another program, a $65 million upgrade program for low power and translator stations, which we know we attended the National Translator meeting, and many of these operators are very eager to make the transition. We have a technical correction that we have proposed that would allow us to give money out earlier and give it out in 2009 to help these people actually make the transition. So we're asking people to.
Where is that? What's the status of that technical correction? Because I think that takes an act of Congress to fix.
Yes, it was in the Senate. I don't think anyone has offered anything in the House yet.
Mr. Chairman, is there opportunity in this committee to fix that problem?
Could you state the problem?
Yeah, the problem is in the original bill, there was $65 million set aside to help with the transition for translators and low power broadcasters, but in a deft budgetary move, it takes place in a different year than when it's needed. It actually needs to be moved back into a year where it will make sense for the transition. It was.
I think that it's important for you and I and the other members to work together on that issue. You're right. You put your finger on a problem.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. And I guess my time's expired.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Stupak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. McGuire-Rivera, if I may. Right now, as I said in my opening, I have stores in my district that are out of converter boxes, have no idea when they'll get new ones. This is particularly frustrating because the stores don't know when they'll get new converter box in. Isn't the NTIA supposed to coordinate distribution of coupons with the inventory in stock to the areas that receive them? Do you coordinate at all with the stores to make sure?
Initially, in the initial release of the coupons, in fact, we waited until the end of February to make sure boxes were available. We have not heard from retailers except on anecdotal and incidental basis, and unfortunately in your district, that boxes are unavailable. We do understand that over the summer there may be some problems, and I believe some of the retailers will talk about that.
Well, there's problems right now. We don't have to wait till summer. They're occurring right now in my district.
And I have a feeling that boxes are being sent to Petoskey now. But
to stores that don't exist.
Oh, we had talked about that, the stores that don't exist and vendors that were on the list. We have decertified about a dozen bad apple retailers just for that type of action.
So what are you saying then? You're sending out information that has bad apples on it? When you send a converter box program, coupon program, you list right here on the bottom part the stores. Then how are these stores making on there if they don't exist?
The stores, when you get on the list, you're certified. You certify that you are going to participate.
Well,
You've been in the
you
business,
certify? How do you certify a store that doesn't exist?
When we hear a complaint from someone that, in fact, this retailer no longer exists, or this retailer took my coupon and no box ever materialized and there's not one in sight, the enforcement action that we have is to decertify them from the program.
Okay, but doesn't help the consumer. So we wrote to you back in February.
The ones that we have decertified, we have tried to help make the consumers whole, because they are essentially.
Why don't you have the retailers do as Radio Shack was willing to do for the gentleman in my district, and just accept the coupons, and then when they get the converter boxes, they can send the converter boxes to the constituent.
Well, that's what we have recommended, that they not swipe the card. And some, I will unfortunately say, some have been bold enough to ask for reimbursement for boxes that never existed.
Well, we're not asking for reimbursement. We're asking for the box, which doesn't exist in our district. So why can't a store take your little coupon here that you send them and hold it until a converter box comes, and then the constituent can go back instead of getting the runaround?
What happens, I mean, there is no reason why the merchant cannot put that person on a waiting list. The unfortunate problem that we have had is of people swiping the boxes and then holding the consumer hostage for a box that never appears, which is why we discourage merchants from swiping the coupon.
Well, why do they have to swipe it? Why can't they just hold the coupon?
They can hold it, or the
comes?
consumer can hold. They could put the consumer's name on a list, and the consumer can hold the coupon.
In
We just
February,
don't want them to. The consumer. We are seeing instances where people are taking the coupons and holding the consumer.
A coupon's only good for 90 days. So if you can't get a box within that 90-day period, what good is this? Why don't we just extend the expiration date past that 90 days? You certainly, NTIA certainly has discretion underneath the law as written.
Well, we have some lawyers who might argue that, but in fact, we had just discussed that. We right now are looking into the issue of reissuing. It is a situation that it is.
Well, I and Mr. Bingo and this
breathtakingly
committee wrote you in
expensive.
February asking you to extend the expiration date because we were seeing problems. It's now, what, June, almost 4 months later. When are we going to get an answer on extending the expiration date so we don't run into troubles, especially since we know stores don't have enough converter boxes available?
Okay. We will have firm redemption rates.
When will you have that?
In July 1st.
So this one expires June 30th, valid through June 30th. So you're going to have an order out so this individual know on July 1st that his coupon's been extended so he can get his box?
But an order, most likely not. No, I'd have to say.
No, you're not going to have it ready for July 1st. When are you going to have it?
But I think what we can do is, in your district, make sure those boxes are there.
Well, and that's just my district, the rest of the country. And I appreciate your willingness to make sure my district is taken care of. But if Mr. Markey holds his 6th hearing in 90 days from now, I'll be back here asking you the same question. So when are you going to make a decision on extending the coupons past the 90-day period?
When we look at the redemption rates, and most likely we will make the decision whether.
And when will that be? When can we expect that decision? We know it won't be July 1st, so when can we expect that decision to be made?
I would say later in the summer.
And later in the summer, can you narrow that down? August, September 20th, last day of summer? Can you give me something a little bit more definite?
Nope. I'll get back to Assistant Secretary Baker, and we'll give you a date.
I was just warming up, Mr. Chairman.
I know, listen, you got us all warming up here. You're hitting on a very sensitive, hot point, and we thank you for that. Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to be all over, and I've got different questions for different folks here, and I'll try to use my time wisely. First of all, I just want to start off by making an observation that I thought was interesting back when Tom Osborne, 3 national championships in Nebraska, decided to run for Congress. And he did a poll and found out he had 94% name recognition. Most of us in the political world would love to have 94%, but in the state of Nebraska, for 6% not to know who Tom Osborne is really incredible. I mean, this is a state where every school child gives the Pledge of Allegiance to start the school day, then goes into the pledge to Tom Osborne. And well, we made it more specific after the 2nd national championship. So my point with this analogy is no matter how hard we try, we could spend billions and trillions and we're still not going to get to 100%. But I'd have to say my observations is that at least in my area, there are as many DTV transition PSAs and commercials than there are car ads. If you watch TV, there is no way not to know of this DTV transition. Now, Dr. McGuire-Rivera and Mr. Goldstein hit on 2 subgroups that I think we really need to focus on. When I talk to Rotaries and ask them to raise hands, 100% raise hands that they know the details of the transition. But how about with seniors and minorities? Now, obviously, there is more going on than just what the FCC is doing. So I'm going to ask all 3 of you, starting with the chairman, are you calculating what the local broadcasters are doing by way of outreach to the 2 communities that are most at risk, which is the foreign-speaking and the elderly? And do you know what they're doing on the grassroots local level?
Well, we certainly we are aware that all the broadcasters have to either opt into the NAB's plan for what they're going to be doing at their local level, which involves certain kind of requirements or our own specific requirements. But there aren't. But neither of those 2 platforms require anything for foreign language for Spanish speakers or foreign languages at the local level. So we know that they have one of 2 options in terms of educating consumers in terms of the number of PSAs. They've got to do and under ours it increases over time. They've also got a 100-day countdown under the NAB plan. But we don't and we know that goes on at the grassroots level. But we don't know that as far as.
So you don't know that the broadcasters in Omaha, Nebraska have done Spanish town hall meetings, that they do advertising in Spanish on the Spanish-speaking radio and low-power broadcasters?
We know that if they're Spanish if they're Spanish language broadcasters, they're required to be doing that, including in Spanish. But we don't know if the ones that are broadcasting in English have also run a Spanish PSA as opposed to just an English PSA.
Yeah, well, they're doing a great job, and my guess is that. Was it you, Dr. McGuire-Rivera, that said that 42% of the calls coming in are Spanish-speaking calls?
About 40% are Spanish-speaking.
To me, that says that we're probably making an impact into that community, that if 42% of the calls. Are you able to gauge the impact that all of these efforts are having within a specific community?
Well, we look at within each DMA, and with our dashboard now, we can tell when coupon requests will go up. I think I had mentioned before, we work very closely with Univision that does not just PSAs, but they do specials. And in fact, we have to know about their specials because the call center volume.
Does that mean no? I don't want to be rude. I just asked if you're able to quantify.
Yes, we can look within each DMA and see if coupon requests go up. That's sort of the.
All right. So that's your marker. Mm-hmm. Mr. Goldstein, have you guys looked into that specifically?
For not this report, but the ongoing work that we're still doing for the committee, we're looking at consumer awareness and consumer education programs and how effective they are, and we are looking at a variety of different avenues that.
Any preliminary thoughts then? When is that?
At this point, I don't. We haven't analyzed it sufficiently.
All right.
But we will get back to the committee, obviously, later this, actually probably early this fall with that information.
Okay. Appreciate that.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Rivera, you heard my opening statement, both the chair of the FCC, Chairman Martin, the tropical storm hurricane issue and emergencies. Has that come up either at the FCC or in NTIA about what we can do about battery-operated digital?
We have talked about that a lot, and it's a great concern. Right now, my understanding is that there is not a converter for a battery-operated television. When you sort of think about the practicality of hooking a converter on a big converter on a little TV, now perhaps by next year there would be one, although I think this is important. And we have FEMA as one of the organizations that we work with, is I think the word needs to get out. The people who are really dependent on these battery-operated televisions need to look into getting a digital one. I know that sounds, but right now, particularly with the hurricane season coming up, and I think this is going to be one of the things that we're going to learn a lot about in Wilmington, because they will make the transition in September, and that will be hurricane season.
Okay. And I appreciate my colleague from Nebraska concerning a large percentage of calls, the DTV coupon program are non-English. Do you have information on the actual numbers, and does NTI have the sufficient staff to assist these individuals?
I don't have exact figures on the number of calls. I can get those for you. As I know, we have backup call centers, and that would, particularly when Univision does a special, we will have additional Spanish-speaking callers. In the very beginning of the program, I think we were really surprised at how many there were, and I realized at that time that we did not have enough, and now we are up to speed and staffed up on the Spanish call center.
Because I know not only from Nebraska, but California, of course, in Texas, we have the same situation. And I know last Saturday there was a huge event in Houston. Univision has been doing very well. In fact, Univision Telemundo and our Spanish stations, along with my English stations, are trying to get that word out for folks. So I'm glad to hear that that's happening. One other question: under the bill that passed, in Congress in '04, the first $990 million dedicated to the coupon program is open enrollment, where the final $510 million is dedicated toward coupons exclusive for broadcast-only households. Or NTIA be basing the eligibility cutoff on the $990 million applications or the actual redemptions? I guess that's the issue, the percentage of non-redemption. I know it's still out there for that, what's left of the 90 days for those particular cards, but is that going to be an issue, and has that been contemplated?
We are looking at that very closely. Basically, it would be when the first $890 million is gone as redeemed coupons is when it would start. There will be periods, we believe, as you get toward the end of the year, where there will be enough redeemed and some out in the street that we might have to go into that contingent pool while we're waiting for some other ones to come back in. But we will get back with you as our plans become more final on this. And again, we're doing this now. We will be back to you soon on exactly how we do this, because we'd like to do it in a way that's seamless, so the consumer doesn't really know if the redemption rates stay the same.
And I know you haven't decided yet because the public comment period just ended, but on the issue of the of dealing with P.O. boxes and nursing homes or senior citizen centers, assisted living locations, things like that, that may have one address, but is that something that will be dealt with fairly quickly? That will be dealt with as absolutely quickly as we can. We would like the rulemaking closed last night. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I hate to not address the chair of the FCC, although welcome back before our subcommittee.
No, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I certainly think that of the issues that you raised, I think the one relates to battery-operated portable televisions is one we've heard significant concern about. There are no boxes yet that can be battery-operated, so that the only option for consumers today would be able to go buy a new digital portable television. Apparently, there are some of the boxes that that can operate from an external car battery, 12-volt car battery. You can plug it in the car, but then you have to put the TV in the car to end up working. I mean, I think that practically, I think today consumers would have to go get a new digital battery-operated television. And I think that's one of the things we've heard about a lot of concern from consumers, and particularly in Wilmington as well.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would hope at a next hearing we could discuss that, and between now and then we will find out from our information on what's available in the market for both the hopefully lower price for battery-operated DVs for the next hurricane season, not this one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Radonovich.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for this hearing, and to you, panel, welcome to the committee hearing. I do have a question for Dr. McGuire-Rivera. Doctor, can you explain, I know you went into this a little bit earlier in your opening remarks and such, but what the NTIA is doing to prepare for the September 8th Wilmington test?
We're working actively with the FCC to get ready for that test and learn all we can about what will happen the last 100 days. We have reworked a set of materials that are it's on our website and the materials we ordinarily use, changing the date from February 17th to September 8th, 2008. We're going to start working the messages down there that we would use in the 100 days before February 17th to fine-tune those, and we are also using that to get some hands-on experience. For example, we're going down this week to meet directly with senior groups and visit nursing homes to see how to handle those situations there.
All right, thank you. And on a national level, just let me know if these numbers are correct, because I've got a list of things that the NTIA has certified. At least according to my information, the NTIA has certified 1,800 retailers with more than 19,000 store locations to accept your coupons.
That's correct.
And the coupons can also, consumers can redeem the coupons on from 19 online retailers?
Mm-hmm, correct.
And also 7 telephone retailers
Yes.
as well? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I have no
Thank
further
you.
questions.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses. Mr. Martin, in my opening remarks, I mentioned H.R. 6055, which is a bill I introduced really to be a marker to talk about whether we should set up a fully transparent relationship between the public safety broadband licensee and the Commission. I just wonder what your reaction is to the legislation.
Oh, well, I certainly think it's important that we have more transparency in the broadband public safety licensee, and it was a concern when I've testified before. I was concerned about the fact that they could end up having private sector interests with some of the money that has been focused on them, and with some of their potential partners. So I think that anything would end up being helpful. I still believe that a public-private partnership is the only option the Commission has to try to achieve the public safety interoperable spectrum build-out that's going to be necessary from a public safety standpoint. And as a result, I think that legislation would be helpful.
Well, thank you. I also wonder whether in terms of your own rulemaking, you could enact a rule that would get us to the same place and perhaps reprogram some money, or whether this is not possible.
I think that we can adopt rules that would restrict and make transparent their relationship with any private entity, but I don't think we can directly provide them the resources or the money. I don't think that we're allowed to do that. We don't have money that we would be able to provide to an entity like that.
Well, let me say, Mr. Chairman, that I hope our subcommittee will look at this. I know there's interest on a bipartisan basis. I've talked to Mr. Pickering at some length about this point, because I think it had a lot to do with why, or something to do with why the first auction failed. I'd be happy to yield.
My commitment that we will do that, yes.
Thank you. Moving along, I encourage you to move to a second auction. I know you're thinking about many of the things I and others have suggested. I wonder if you agree with me that without that second auction and without the public-private partnership, we won't get to a place where our public safety providers have a true national interoperable network. What's your view?
I do agree. I think that without Congress appropriating the direct resources to build a public safety network, the only other option, I believe, is to have a public-private partnership where we auction off this spectrum with a requirement that whoever wins this particular piece also be required to build out and allow for people to be able to use it. I also agree that I think it's important that we try to have finished the auction by the date of the transition. At the end of the date of the transition, that spectrum will become available, and we should make sure that the entities are in the position to begin trying to build on it and be able to take advantage of it as quickly as possible.
Well, let me just respond to that. My problem with Plan B, as you just described it, is I don't think we'll get to the place we need to get to. I think we need a list of technical specifications, hopefully on the front end, so that people know what they're bidding on. And my question to you is, does the FCC have the in-house expertise to work on this list of technical specifications as part, perhaps, of the second auction?
Well, I think that we do have, from a technical perspective, just understanding technically what's required. I mean, many of the proposals that had come into us last time had actually encouraged us to just defer on what those technical requirements would end up being. We have actually, though, one of the commitments I made in trying to move forward on the last notice is that we would reach out and try to hire a chief technologist to come on board. We've actually we were already and have been in negotiations with trying to end up hiring someone. It is, but I'm not sure whether we'll be successfully able to or not get someone on board to come on and take that position. I don't know in the short run.
Well, I hope you are successful. I mean, there are other ways to do this. Commissioner Copps has suggested we set up an outside commission, but I worry that all those ideas will delay us. If working in partnership, we can come up with the right specifications, come up with a transparent system, come up with clear bidding guidelines, I think we can succeed, and I feel strongly that we only have one more shot at this to get it right. Do you agree with that?
I agree, and I also think that that if we set up a whole separate commission to study it, I think it could end up delaying this for too long.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Martin, and I thank you to the other witnesses. Mr. Chairman, the set-top boxes and the transition rules are very important for consumers, but the most important thing to me, and I think many of us, is making sure we have one national interoperable communications network so that the next time there is a natural or man-made disaster, our communities are safer. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing is clear, as we have had this series of hearings on the digital transition, we've moved from theoretical to actual, and many of the questions that we've heard today are actual problems that we are now hearing from constituents about. And I'd like to follow up on a question that Mr. Gonzalez initiated, and this relates to an actual complaint I've received from a constituent of mine, and it deals with the digital cliff. Much of my congressional district is in the mountains of North Georgia. Much of the over-air analog signals are received either from Atlanta or Chattanooga. The complaint was an individual who received his signal from Atlanta. He bought it, he got his box, he hooked it up, and he got nothing. Now, I guess my question is similar to some of the ones that have already been asked on this issue, but I'd like to maybe understand how that plays out a little better. Now, he may have been receiving marginal over-the-air signals to begin with. I understand that. And if it was marginal, I understand he may be in that category that would receive nothing. But let me ask you about the question that you responded to Mr. Walden about the translators. Now, as I understand translators, they're primarily associated with low-power television transmissions. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Translators are a form of the low-power television broadcast.
Do any of the full-power over-the-air stations use the translators as a booster or an additional way to bump up their signal in mountainous areas, for example?
No, TV translators themselves are low power, but they oftentimes do, they may be affiliated with providing content that's on other full power stations. They could be. Yes.
Do you have, I'm back to Mr. Walden's question about maps, do you have maps that would show areas that might be in those situations?
with?
Well, we absolutely do have maps and lists of all of the communities that have low power stations. So we can end up providing that. We've provided that, I think, to the committee staff in the past, and be happy to provide that specifically for you in your district, so you can see what low power stations are in your district. And in reference to the concern that your customer raised in the mountain area, in part it may be that the broadcast signals that he was receiving from Atlanta in analog, they haven't completed their final construction of their antenna or gone to maximizing their power on the digital side. In other words, between now and the end of the transition, lots of broadcasters are going to have to move their digital antenna from the side, the digital where they send out the signal, from the side of their antenna to the top where the current analog signal is, because they get a better coverage. So particularly if you're on the edge of that coverage, you may not be getting what you're going to get at the end of the transition in terms of the full digital capability. So it could be that they bought that box and they've hooked it up, but if they're on the edge of that signal, the digital signal may ultimately replicate that analog signal, but it may not have done that just yet. And that could be why it's not, just because they're not receiving it now doesn't mean they necessarily won't by the end of the transition.
Do you have any information as to how far along that progression has been made by various stations?
Absolutely, we actually know it station by station, market by market. One of the when we asked, there were, as I testified before, there were about 8 markets that were ready to undergo a DTV transition test. The rest of the markets all have at least some of their broadcast stations that aren't yet technically in the position to either have all of their facilities or are capable of broadcasting at full power. So we do on a market by market, and we'll be happy to provide that to you.
We will be contacting you then to try to get that information to address our constituents' concerns. But I presume, in spite of all of our best efforts, there are probably going to be some individuals that just fall off the edge of that digital cliff. Am I correct?
That's right. There'll be some percentage of them. As I said, we estimate that it could impact about 5% of the people, and of course only about 15% of people on average don't subscribe to cable or satellite that would be impacted. But yes, there'll be some people that will be impacted.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. The gentleman's time has expired. All time for questions of this panel by the subcommittee has been completed. We welcome your continued interaction with the subcommittee on this issue. You can, I think, sense from the interest level of the members that they are now beginning to translate consumer/voter interest in this issue and the success with which this program is going to be implemented. Time is of the essence. We'll be back again with another hearing. We really do hope that you've solved all the problems before the next hearing so that we can just give you all a big pat on the back for the excellent job which you're doing. But understand that there is going to be a direct correlation between the numbers of problems solved and the level of intensity which you're going to feel from this side of the panel in the next hearing. Congress is a stimulus response institution, and there's nothing more stimulating than the thought that millions of their constituents will not have TV. You almost can't imagine anything short of nuclear war that would draw the attention of the American voter. So please make sure that you have done everything you can before the next hearing to solve the problems. We thank you all so much for your attention today. And now I would ask our second panel to come up to the witness table.
Thank you. think we're chair missing here somewhere. Yeah, Mr. Lloyd, you may need to move over one more chair or something.
Is that right? Well, 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Material. Well, then I'll take a pass then.
Well, just pull one of those up.
Here you go. Here you go. That's Mr. Material. One over here. It'll be tight in here, I think. Get in. Thank you. Sure.
Sorry about that.
Oh, this is comfort, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, we reconvene the hearing for the purpose of hearing from our extremely distinguished second panel. And we're going to begin with a return visitor to the subcommittee and somebody who has obviously a very, very important job. Mr. Tom Romeo is the Director of Federal Services for Global Business Service, or IBM. We welcome you back, Mr. Romeo, and whenever you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on the progress the IBM team is making implementing the NTIA TV Converter Box Coupon Program. Earlier this morning, you heard from NTIA Associate Administrator Dr. McGuire Rivera about the continued high level of interest consumers are showing in the coupon program. Over 16 million coupons have been ordered as of June 3rd, representing an average of over 3 million coupons ordered on a monthly basis. While the statute allows for coupon requests to be taken between January 1st, 2008 and March 31st, 2009, at the current rate of public demand, we expect to have accepted requests for the initial round of 22.25 million coupons by early August of 2008. When this milestone is reached, a decision needs to be made as to whether the program moves to shipping contingent coupons or whether coupons not redeemed during the base funding period will be recycled to offer more coupons as part of the base funding period. We have made great progress recruiting the voluntary participation of both large national retailers and smaller local retailers, including 19 online retailers and 7 retailers offering a phone order option. As of June 3rd, there are over 1,800 retailers representing more than 19,000 stores nationwide currently certified and participating in the program. Consumer education continues to be a focal point of the program. We believe the strong demand for coupons indicates we are on the right track. Our partner, Ketchum Public Affairs, continues to lead and refine our messaging, with particular focus on communities with the largest estimated number of over-the-air reliant households. Now I would like to take a moment to talk about some of the challenges we have faced and important future steps. The accelerated pace of consumer demand has required our team to react quickly to pinpoint needed adjustments and implement alternative solutions when necessary. For example, when the program launched at the start of this year, consumers ordered 2.1 million coupons during the first week of January. By February 21, 2008, when the first coupons were shipped to consumers, the program had processed requests for more than 6 million coupons. These numbers far exceeded initial projections. We increased daily and weekly coupon distribution capacity to allow for far greater numbers than planned, and have now issued more than 15.1 million coupons. Today, a consumer can expect to have their coupon ordered, processed, and mailed within 10 to 15 days, and to receive their coupon within 3 to 4 weeks of placing their order. Continued strong consumer interest in the coupon program and the DTV transition generally has translated to continued high call volumes into the Consumer Support Center. The call center handled more than 2 million calls during the month of May, with approximately 40% of those coming from Spanish speakers. The Interactive Voice Response, or IVR system, has been able to support between 50 to 60% of the callers without a need for a live agent, a very high IVR resolution rate by industry standards. Recently, more of the public is calling with questions about the program or about the digital transition rather than to request a coupon, increasing our need for live operators. We continue to adjust messaging in the IVR system to expedite the coupon ordering process, answer as many questions as possible, offer recorded information while callers wait for an agent, and provide a positive experience for the consumer. As we plan for the coming months, we have identified several challenges that need to be addressed. The majority of consumer messaging is focused on making sure consumers understand the transition to digital broadcasting will occur on February 17, 2009. Consumers who wait until February 17th or later to request their coupons may not realize that it will take several weeks for their coupons to arrive by mail. Further, if even 1% of the public were to attempt to order their coupons that day, our telephone and computer systems would be stretched beyond current capacity. In light of these sobering scenarios, we are working with our partners to adjust public messaging to encourage consumers to act well in advance of February 17th transition date. We will also work with NTIA to determine what capacity enhancements are prudent in anticipation of spikes in demand for the first quarter of 2009. We are also exploring feasible alternative solutions for consumers who request coupons after the transition day. The IBM team is pleased to be part of implementing this vital program and recognizes that many challenges remain on the way to February 17, 2009. Our team continues to be ready to meet those challenges and work to ensure that consumers across the United States have continued access to free television broadcasting, including educational, entertainment, emergency, and homeland security information. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Next witness is Ms. Kim Connor, who is the Vice President and General Manager for Fayetteville and Wilmington, North Carolina markets for Time Warner Cable. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Stearns, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Kim Cannon, and I'm Vice President and General Manager for Time Warner Cable's Wilmington, North Carolina cable systems. As you know, the FCC has chosen the Wilmington market as a location for its early digital transition trial. Time Warner Cable is the largest cable operator in the Wilmington area, serving more than 96,000 subscribers. I am pleased to have this opportunity to describe for you how Time Warner Cable is helping to ensure that the digital transition, both nationally and in Wilmington, is successful. Today's hearing is entitled The Status of the DTV Transition, 252 Days and Counting. Of course, for those of us in the Wilmington area, it should read only 90 days and counting. Being the leading cable operator in the first broadcast television market to switch from analog to digital presents some challenges, but Time Warner Cable is ready to meet them head-on. The good news is that television viewers who are connected to cable are at no risk of losing access to broadcast television stations. But some cable homes have additional sets that rely on over-the-air reception. For that reason, last September, Time Warner Cable and other cable operators launched a $200 million advertising campaign to educate the public about the upcoming broadcast transition and the NTIA's Converter Box coupon program. Time Warner Cable itself is devoting over $30 million in resources to promoting the digital transition by running television, radio, and print advertisements, posting information on our system websites, and participating in community events designed to draw attention to the transition. Ironically, the success of this information campaign has created one of our biggest challenges in the Wilmington area. Having spent nearly a year telling people that the transition will occur on February 17, 2009, we now have to make sure that everyone in the Wilmington market understands that for them, the transition will occur 5 months earlier. In order to meet this challenge, Time Warner Cable is committing additional resources to Wilmington-specific educational efforts. The website for the Wilmington area systems has been updated to highlight the new transition date. Alternate billing inserts, television spots, radio scripts, newspaper ads, and in-store displays have been prepared, trumpeting the fact that the transition will occur on September 8th. On-screen crawls directing viewers to our website for more information about the transition are running on various channels, and we have plans to use billboards to inform the community as well. In addition, system personnel are participating in media interviews and other outreach efforts. For example, our Wilmington Cable Store will be hosting workshops specifically targeting the elderly and minority communities, with local broadcasters invited to participate. Time Warner Cable representatives also are manning information booths at area festivals and events, such as a health fair at the Wilmington Senior Center. Moreover, because most of our customers in the Wilmington area are served by upgraded state-of-the-art facilities, we don't expect any technical issues to arise as a result of the transition. Nevertheless, to be safe, we are coordinating with the local broadcasters to make certain everything goes smoothly. We're also making sure that the Wilmington area systems have the equipment and personnel necessary to hook up new service for customers and to connect additional sets for those viewers that decide to switch from over-the-air reception. In conclusion, I again want to stress that Time Warner Cable is dedicated to ensuring both through its individual efforts and through cooperative actions with broadcasters and others that the broadcast television digital transition is a good experience for consumers both in Wilmington and around the nation, and I would be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Cannon, very much. Our next witness is Mark Lloyd. He is the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives for the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. Mr. Lloyd is here today to speak about the different challenges from affected communities facing this transition. We thank you, Mr. Lloyd, and we look forward to your testimony.
Chairman Markey, great to see you again. Members of the committee, on behalf of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights and the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights Education Fund, again, thank you for the opportunity to testify in today's hearing on the status of digital television. LCCR is the nation's oldest and most diverse coalition of organizations working to protect the civil rights of all Americans through legislative advocacy. And the LCCR Ed Fund works to establish further the goal of equality under law through public education. Mr. Chairman, despite the valiant volunteer work of our members and the DTV Transition Coalition, the nation is simply not prepared at present for the shutoff of full-power analog television broadcasting. There is, in brief, too little funding for research, education, and outreach to ensure that when February 17, 2009 arrives, all Americans will continue to receive over-the-air broadcast service. We are concerned that the disproportionate impact of this transition on our constituents will result in a greater divide between those who have access to vital information and those who do not. Later this month, the Leadership Conference will complete an extensive report on the challenges regarding the transition to digital television. We look forward to submitting that report to this committee. The serious problems with the transition identified at the Leadership Conference include lack of viewer awareness regarding the significance of the transition and continuing viewer confusion, retailer confusion, unnecessary retailer upselling, TV converter box program problems and complexities, confusion over low-power community television stations, and the continued need for analog pass-through, no rapid response plan to deal with the problems after February 17th. While the federal agencies most responsible for managing this transition, the NTIA and FCC, and a wide range of private stakeholders, are working hard to address the impact of the transition, LCCR believes that the challenges involved in preparing Americans for the digital TV transition are of such magnitude that while active congressional oversight is important, strong congressional response is required. We strongly support the subsidy program and the coupon program designed to help Americans make this transition to digital television. But our work on the ground indicates a variety of problems. The coupon program began well before there were sufficient converter boxes on the shelves. Many who rushed, looking at Good Morning America and other programs, to get their coupons went to the stores to find out the converter boxes weren't there, or the low-cost converter boxes weren't there, or the analog pass-through converter boxes weren't there. As Congressman Stupek noted earlier, converter boxes still are not available or are in short supply in many communities. Many, we have found, large retail manufacturers, or retailers rather, refuse to accept coupons for mail order or Internet purchases of converter boxes. Not all boxes eligible for the coupon program support video description services so needed by members of our community, or provide an easy analog pass-through for community broadcasters. Again, we applaud NTIA for showing flexibility with some of the other problematic provisions of the program, but we hope this committee will adopt the recommendations of Senator Inouye and Senator Stevens of the Senate Commerce Committee. Consumers should be able to use their converter box coupons to pre-order so they might obtain boxes that are out of stock or in limited supply without running up against the expiration date, Also, consumers should be able to reapply for coupons only if they have found that their coupons have expired. Too many Americans, as I said, responded earlier before the market was ready. First and foremost, we are deeply concerned that the $5 million that Congress has allocated to NTIA to educate consumers about the coupon program will be woefully inadequate to support the kind of public education effort that the transition process requires. I know that other countries are spending much more than the United States in preparing their citizens for the transition to digital. Given the $20 billion raised in the 700 megahertz auction, maybe 1% of that could be used to actually help American consumers make this transition. A public education campaign is not merely airing a series of public service announcements that digital television is coming. It is much more complicated here, as the testimony so far has suggested. The important services of low power and other community broadcasters will continue to send along signals. Full power television service is not being exchanged simply for digital service. Many full power broadcasters will be sending multiple digital signals. Some of those signals will be high definition, some will not. The contour, the reach of the digital signal will not exactly match the reach of the old analog signal. These are not simple messages to convey. And that does not even take into account the educational effort regarding a complicated coupon program. We at the Leadership Conference are working with the Southeast Asian Action Resource Center, the National Council of La Raza, the NAACP, the National Urban League, the National Congress of American Indians, the American Association of People with Disabilities, and others to reach deep into communities and work with direct service providers to get the word out. We know that one of our members, AARP, and others of our members are also extending themselves to help get the word out. We have received no financial assistance from the FCC or NTIA to prepare our communities for this major transition, and our resources are limited. Again, we applaud the public service announcements of NAB and PBS, but again, these efforts are simply not sufficient. Final note.
If you could summarize. Thank you.
My final note is simply that we need an aggressive, ongoing monitor effort, and there must be plans in place to respond rapidly to those most vulnerable populations who end up losing service. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd, very, very much. And our next witness is Mr. Paul McTeer. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Raycom Media. Welcome, sir.
Chairman Markey, Ranking Member Stearns, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Paul McTeer, and I am the President and Chief
If you could use the microphone, it's a new technology in the media world that
you'll have to excuse
voices. Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Chairman Markey, Ranking Member Stearns, and members of the subcommittee, my name is Paul McTeer, and I am the President and Chief Executive Officer of Raycom Media. Raycom owns 38 full-power television stations serving communities across the country, including station WECT in Wilmington, North Carolina. The Wilmington market has been chosen for an early cutover from analog to digital television service on September 8, 2008, while the rest of the country will make the transition on February the 17th, 2009. The focus of my testimony today is on the efforts of Raycom and our government and private sector partners in the five-county Wilmington area. A cornerstone of Raycom's operational philosophy is our commitment to strong local service. We believe that this is good for the public and good for our business. Our participation in the Wilmington area experiment is consistent with this commitment to public service. The cutover to digital-only operations that the country will undertake on February the 17th, 2009 poses various risks and challenges. The FCC asked the Wilmington area stations to take this step more than 5 months earlier than the rest of the country on September 8, 2008, so that the country can assess those risks and challenges on the basis of the Wilmington experience and better prepare for the February 17th cutover. Not only does Wilmington have 5 fewer months than the rest of the country to prepare for this transition, it also must accomplish the transition in an environment where the entire rest of the country, including television markets adjacent to Wilmington, will be emphasizing the February 17th digital cutover date. There will be problems, and some will continue after September 8th, through intense news coverage, heavy doses of PSAs, and numerous over on-air and off-air activities, WECT and our sister stations will be engaged in a vigorous, multifaceted campaign to anticipate and overcome these problems. Many of our efforts will be devoted to practical issues, where to obtain converter boxes, how to install them, antenna issues, and the like. We are also working intensely with cable and satellite operators, equipment retailers, local government, local civic groups, and other groups especially well suited to outreach to an at-risk population like the elderly, rural viewers, seasonal residents, and minorities. For example, 3 weeks ago, Wilmington held a town hall meeting devoted to digital transition experiment, and we expect to participate in similar gatherings in numerous communities within the market. In these efforts, we frequently stress the pioneering role that the Wilmington area is playing. We're also working with the FCC, which is providing exceptional support, and with NTIA and with the NAB.
You have to be.
I am proud of the way our industry has responded to the challenges of the transition. One attachment to my written statement catalogs the industry's strenuous efforts under the NAB's leadership. I am also proud of Raycom's localized efforts across its 38 markets as described in another attachment to my written testimony. As the attachment reflects, Raycom stations have broadcast more than 50,000 transition education announcements since April of last year, as well as 1,400 news items related to the transition. I am hopeful that with the help of many others, the Wilmington experiment will succeed, and that later the full nationwide transition will also succeed. The result will be the greatest breakthrough in television since the introduction of color, crystal clear picture, vastly improved sound, and the opportunity for more services. There is one issue that I am told that only Congress can fix. The Satellite Home Viewer Extension and Reauthorization Act provides television stations with exclusivity rights for their analog signals, but through an oversight, it was never updated to take into account the cutover to digital-only operations. Without a fix to this inadvertent loophole, the integrity of local markets could be destroyed and local service jeopardized. In closing, we especially wish to thank Chairman Martin and Commissioner Copps for their leadership in connection with this experiment. I also want to acknowledge the role of this committee in advancing the transition and protecting consumer interests as we make our way through these challenging transitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McTeer, very much. Our next witness is Mr. John Ripperton. He's the Senior Vice President for Supply Chain Management from Radio Shack, and we welcome you, sir, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman Markey, Ranking Member Stearns, and members of the subcommittee. My name is John Ripperton, and I am the Senior Vice President for Supply Chain Management at Radio Shack. We're grateful for the chance to update the subcommittee again on the involvement of Radio Shack and other members of the Consumer Electronic Retailers Coalition in the transition to digital television and NTIA's Converter Box Coupon Program. As you know, Radio Shack is a major consumer electronics retailer with over 4,400 corporate stores and another 1,500 dealer stores located throughout the U.S. We consider ourselves to be your neighborhood retailers, an attribute very helpful in the digital transition. Radio Shack has remained steadfast in its commitment to the transition and the coupon program since its creation. We've heard very positive feedback from our consumers about the quality of their television viewing with our converter boxes connected. Radio Shack is not alone in its efforts and commitment. I'm going to focus on several issues important to the continued success of the program and transition. First, as of June 4th, NTIA's website indicates approximately 15 million coupons have been mailed. That's an average of 104,000 requests for coupons being placed daily. These statistics demonstrate the extraordinary interest consumers are showing in the benefits of digital television in the converter box. However, these statistics also indicate that there may be significant demand being placed on inventory during the next few months. Retailers also continue to be faced with product adjustments to accommodate the many low-power broadcasters that will not participate in the transition next February. Manufacturers have been working with NTIA on the approval of boxes with analog pass-through capability. To date, 23 such models are approved. Last week, Radio Shack announced that it is among the first of the national retailers to have analog pass-through boxes arriving in our stores. The boxes are also available through our Direct-to-You program. The pent-up demand for converter boxes combined with the interest in providing analog pass-through boxes, may present challenges for retailers this summer. It is essential that retailers receive as granular information as possible from NTIA about the status of coupon distribution and redemption. Retailers are doing all they can to provide converter boxes to consumers, even when a particular store inventory is low. Radio Shack has a program called Direct to You. This program allows our corporate stores to place orders from a central fulfillment center in the event the store is out of stock. When an order is placed, the consumer will receive the converter box free of any delivery charge. As we announced in February, the company also created a dedicated toll-free number, 1-877-RS-DTV for you for orders. Other retailers have similar toll-free numbers. I would be remiss if I did not mention our concern about consumers who fail to redeem coupons before expiration. There are a number of solutions, but they present challenges of their own at this time in the program. Radio Shack's solution will be to continue our aggressive support of our direct-to-you option if we encounter inventory issues within our stores. Second, when Radio Shack testified in February, we mentioned an unforeseen cost that results from a 5% tariff that the U.S. Customs has imposed on the importation of coupon-eligible boxes. Retailers believe it is inappropriate for the government to subsidize the purchase of these converter boxes and then tax their importation. This inequity is even more apparent and problematic as retailers and manufacturers may need to pay premium freight costs to meet consumer demand. Recently, Representatives Kind and Brady introduced a bill, H.R. 5635, to waive the tariff, and I would hope that members of this committee will co-sponsor this urgent legislation and work for its passage. Third, Radio Shack and other large retailers are preparing to accommodate the September 8th transition in Wilmington. We, like other large retailers, have adjusted in-store signage and materials in this market and are participating in community and store events managed by the FCC. In sum, we believe retailers will be prepared. Fourth, we continue to believe that consumer education is the most important component of digital transition. Radio Shack and other CERC members are implementing detailed bilingual education plans, including media, signage, training, and outreach efforts. Even the packaging of our new analog pass-through box is fully bilingual. Radio Shack continues to make significant efforts to train its sales associates on the why, the when, and the how concerning this critical transition. All forms of communication emphasize to our employees the need to ask consumers the right questions. Radio Shack is also participating in a number of community outreach efforts. We are very pleased today to announce that Radio Shack and the American Library Association are partnering to conduct joint community outreach sessions throughout the country.
If you could summarize, please.
Yes, sir. Radio Shack has also held a number of events with NTIA, the Department of Commerce, and the FCC, with more events planned this year. On behalf of Radio Shack and as a member of CERC, I appreciate the opportunity to testify on our continued role in the transition to digital television.
Thank you, Mr. Ripperton, very much. And our final witness is Mr. Eric Rossi, who is Senior Product Manager from the Nielsen Company. So we welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Markey, members of the subcommittee. As you said, my name is Eric Rossi, and my title is Senior Product Manager, Media Product Leadership for the Nielsen Company. I appreciate your invitation to appear before you today. As you know, Nielsen provides audience measurement services for the television industry in the United States through Nielsen Media Research, which produces what is commonly known as the Nielsen ratings. I am here today in my role as the Director of Nielsen's various efforts to prepare for the 2009 digital television transition. For more than 2 years, Nielsen has undertaken a variety of initiatives to ensure that we remain fully capable of providing the industry highly accurate audience measurement data and analysis as the nation moves from the analog to the digital world of television. As part of our efforts, Nielsen has conducted several surveys and studies to determine the digital readiness of U.S. households, both nationally and at the local level in the nation's 56 largest television markets, where we have ongoing electronic measurement. Nielsen's information on readiness has the advantage of being based on visits by Nielsen staff to our existing homes in our metered samples throughout the country. This allows us to accurately tally the readiness of the equipment in the home rather than relying on self-reporting as some other surveys must do. We released the latest of these surveys late last month, and the findings in this report are the basis of my testimony today. The full report has been submitted to the subcommittee as part of my testimony. The methodology employed in compiling the report is the same as we use in our regular reports on television viewing by the American public. Detailed explanations of the methodology used are also included in the full report submitted to you. We believe our estimates will give you the most accurate picture available on the current status of digital readiness. This is not a prediction of what Nielsen thinks will happen on February 18, 2009. It's a report on the current state. Our tracking of this data over the coming months will allow the industry to determine the efficacy of the education effort as a proportion of unready homes in our sample shrinks. Let me give you the highlights of the report. Based on the Nielsen estimates, 9.4% of all U.S. households are completely unready for the digital television transition. That means in these households, there are no television sets currently capable of receiving digital broadcast television signals. We found that 12.6% of all U.S. households are partly unready, which means that the household has at least one set that is capable of receiving digital broadcast television signals and one set that's not. So with the combined number of completely unready households and partly unready households, we found that 78% of all households are completely ready for the digital transition. In our examination of local markets to determine digital readiness, we found wide gaps between communities that are completely ready for the transition and communities that are less prepared for the switch. Among the markets least prepared for the transition is Milwaukee, where 18.3% of the households are completely unready. In Salt Lake City, 18% of households are completely unprepared for the transition, while 17.3% of Portland, Oregon's households are completely unprepared. Other markets where the number of completely unprepared households range from 17 to 14.2% are Houston, Minneapolis, Dallas-Fort Worth, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Tulsa, and Albuquerque. At the other end of the spectrum is Hartford-New Haven, where 3.1% of households are completely unready for the transition. That figure is 3.8% in New York, 4.1% in Atlanta, and 4.4% in Fort Myers. In several markets, the percentage of households range from 4.5 to 5.5%, and those cities include Boston, West Palm Beach, Charlotte, Philadelphia, New Orleans, and Washington, D.C. As we do in our regular reporting on the viewing habits of television audiences, we looked at demographic data and ethnic audiences in our study of digital readiness. With regard to age, we found that males and females, ages 18 to 24, are the demographic group that would be most impacted if the digital transition occurred today. While these groups make up 4.9% and 4.6% respectively of households of persons 2 years old and older, these same groups represent 6.2% and 5.5% of households of persons 2 years and older who live in completely unready households. In terms of ethnicity, Hispanic households would be most impacted if the DTV transition occurred today. While Hispanics comprise 11.3% of total U.S. households, 19.9% of completely unready households are Hispanic. And it's worth noting that 10.3% of completely unready households speak Spanish only, a figure that is 5 times the percentage of households in the U.S. where only Spanish is spoken. For African Americans, who represent 12.1% of total U.S. households, 16.3% of households of those households are completely unready for the transition. Finally, we analyzed viewing to unready sets and determined that unready sets account for 7.5% of television viewing usage during the day. Television usage to unready sets represented 8.1% of all television usage during prime time, and daily tuning within a completely unready household averages 6.9 hours, while daily tuning to completely ready households averages 8.7 hours. Over the next 7 months, we plan to release updated reports on the digital television transition, and we'll share them with you, the television industry, and other interested parties. I look forward to answering any questions to clarify my testimony, and again, thank you for the opportunity to appear today.
Did you say in the digital ready homes that it's 8.9 hours per day the TV set is on?
Yes.
And if you slept 8 hours?
8.7%. Let me just say that.
No, you said 8.7 hours. How many hours?
Yeah, hours. 8.7 hours per day in a ready household.
In a digital ready household.
Yep.
And 8 hours of sleep.
And 8 hours of work.
And 8 hours. Something's got to go there. I don't think it's going to be the digital TV. So something's going, you know. So that's amazing. Okay, I will recognize myself. And the gentleman from Texas and I, it looks like we have a panel to ourselves here to just indulge. You know, I think this is going to be very interesting. Let me go back to you, Mr. Romeo. You heard Dr. McGuire Rivers on the first panel discuss The issue of administrative funds and also the costs should it prove necessary or advisable to allow NTIA to reissue coupons to consumers who have seen them expire without being able to redeem them. That is, people who walked into stores in the first 90 days and there were no, not because of the consumer, but because of the store or because of something, the converter boxes weren't there. Now their coupon has expired. So could you discuss the issues and the costs here? The administrator, the acting administrator, really didn't sound very optimistic here about the relationship between the cost of reissuing and the likelihood that the consumer will ever be able to get a converter box.
Sure, I'd be happy to comment. First, on the reissuance of the coupons, I think in the discussion earlier, it was talked about eliminating the expiration date, and I think that's much different than allowing a reissuance of a coupon.
Would you favor that? Doing away with the expiration date?
From a program perspective, it would be more expensive to handle it than reissuing coupons.
It would be more expensive just to I'm sorry. Which way is more expensive?
If you just eliminate the expiration date, the problem is that...
Which way is more expensive?
Elimination of the expiration date totally, now that the coupons are out there. So you would, if you allowed reissuance of coupons, what would happen is your coupon would expire, you'd be allowed to order another set of coupons, and I assume if funds were available, then you would be allowed to get additional coupons.
So are you in favor of reissuing coupons?
Where we can do whatever the law allows.
No, I understand that, but you're here as the expert panel. You're out. You see people. You can feel what their problems are, and you're back here, Mr. Romeo. You're here to tell us what makes the most sense, not what does Congress think you should do. You're supposed to be telling us what you think we should be telling, telling you or telling the administrator to do. Do you think it makes sense to reissue the coupons? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Let's go down the panel. We're just going to ask that question. Do you think it makes sense to reissue the coupons? Ms. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. McCare?
Yes.
Yes. I don't have an opinion on that.
Don't have an opinion. Okay. So 7-0 and 1 there. Okay. And what is the cost of that, Mr. Romeo?
Well, the cost of issuing the coupons. So when we were asked to bid on the original contract, there were 33 million coupons to be shipped. Those 33 million coupons will be shipped by the end of October. So any additional shipping of coupons comes with a cost. So the administrative funds that were programmed were for 33 million coupons. My estimate now, given current burn rate, is that at the end of October, 33 million coupons will have been shipped.
Okay.
So that leaves from October till the end of February with, as far as what we're contracted to do, unfunded shipping of coupons.
And what do you think that cost will be? Give us a ballpark figure. It doesn't have to be Fenway Park. It can be Yellowstone Park. But just give us some range of what kind of money we're talking about, Mr. Romeo. You got the program. You're running it.
Right. So the first thing they teach me at IBM is never give an unauthorized price quote. But I'll give you an idea. I'll give you an idea.
Okay.
So there was money set aside. I believe the funding for the total administrative cost for the first two phases of the program was $120 million for 33 million coupons.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could give me an estimate of how many coupons you think will be shipped for the program, you could do the math yourself. 120 million.
Well, what is a reasonable number for the shipping? What do you think?
It depends if you allow reordering of coupons. So current burn rate says 44 million. That's without a ramp up at the end of the program and without you saying I can reorder coupons. If you say that you can reorder coupons.
Can you do the math in your brain there? Is anyone else on the panel here can do the math on as we're doing? Mr. Radio Shack is doing it over here. He's multiplying right now. Have you got the answer yet, Mr. Ripperton? What does it come out to?
Congressman Markey, I think the answer to the question at this juncture is if the demand continues to grow, we will be able to, and unabated, we'll be able to determine that answer fairly soon. But right now, we're not positive what's happening in the marketplace. And by that I say that there may be consumers that are postponing decisions to acquire LCD TVs. There may be consumers that are deciding to not continue with cable services and the like because of the economy, et cetera. And I think that's accelerating the demand for converter boxes that was not anticipated. So that, I believe, is one of the dilemmas that all of us are experiencing right now.
I understand. You know.
So I don't know that we can give you a definitive answer right now, but it's a growing number.
But you can imagine the tension in this room in 4 more months.
Yes, sir.
And you'll be back as a witness, okay? So,
yes,
you know the old question, which is a bigger problem? Ignorance,
we continue to revise
what is the biggest problem, ignorance or apathy? And then the person says, well, I don't know and I don't care. So the problem here is that either way, we're going to have an explosive, situation later on there. So it's in your interest all to know what the answer is. And I just want to say to you, Mr. Rossi, that how many people did you say? You said what percent are completely ready? Are completely unready? What percent?
Completely unready was 9.4% of households.
And what percent are only partially ready? What percent was that?
Let me check. I think it was around 12.6% were partial.
Okay, so the television that I have in my bathroom that is just a regular analog set for the last 23 years looking at me, am I in the partially unready category?
If it's not hooked up to cable or satellite, then yes.
That's correct.
That's
I think
partly.
I think Nielsen's numbers are so far off that it's almost ridiculous that you've got them here, to be honest with you, because there's a lot more people in that category than you think. Okay, I don't think you're measuring my TV set looking at me in that bathroom.
Well, what
I think people all over the country have an extra TV set in some room, and your number is so far off, and GAO is so much closer to it. Just want to say this to you, that it's just not an accurate number. And
well, what I can tell you is that we do, in all of our sample homes, over 30,000 metered homes, we actually send people into those homes to go throughout the house and catalog every single set and what devices are hooked up to it, which we feel is fairly accurate. We have to do that, as part of our, we're entrusted to do that by our clients, so we have to do a good job of capturing all the viewing of every television set. So we feel that we have a pretty good handle on what is actually happening in the household.
I do not believe that that's accurate at all. And I think that a very high percentage of Americans have a TV set in some room that is not hooked up to cable. I just think your number is really much lower than the reality would bear out. Anyway, I turn now to recognize the gentleman from San Antonio, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's some agreement from the members of the committee that we have a problem. The question is how big a problem it's going to be and whether we're doing things to mitigate. And I don't want to put words in the mouths of the previous witnesses, but I didn't get a sense that they're really preparing for the increased activity. And I'll start where I started the first question with the other witnesses. Is there any disagreement that the greater activity regarding the request for the converter boxes is yet to come? Because I'm not sure I got agreement from the first two witnesses on that basic premise. And I mean, I can read, I think this is Mr. Rossi's testimony. As we get closer to the DTV transition date, households will surely upgrade their television equipment at an accelerated rate. Yeah, it's human nature. And we should be anticipating that. Now the question is, are we anticipating it? And I'm not sure that we are. Now we're talking about expiration dates of the coupons, how many were actually of the coupons were utilized. I think it's a startling statistic that of the 800,000 or whatever that were issued, I think maybe 41, 42 out of every 100 were actually swiped. I mean, I don't. If that doesn't tell you something, first of all, that you're going to have a real problem with that particular population that will be barred from getting a coupon for $40 per converter box. That's a real interesting situation in and of itself. The other thing is I believe that Mr. Markey may be onto something about how we gauge, and I don't want to get into the people meter versus diaries and Spanish-speaking households and how they're impacted, because I think there may be a disconnect there, but we can probably take that up at a different time. Mr. Romeo, Mr. Lloyd, and Mr. Ripperton, did you hear anything from the previous witnesses that addresses the concerns that you have expressed about the greater activity that will transpire as we get closer to February the 17th? And Mr. Chairman, I wanted to point out that February 17th will probably take place during the President's week recess when we're back home. We may reconsider being home during that week. I'm not real sure you want to be that close to many of the constituents that no longer have television service. But going back to the question, did you hear anything about saying, yes, you know, we're going to make the adjustments, resources, plans?
I didn't hear anything in the testimony. I can tell you that we are working with NTIA to look at the cost of shipping additional coupons.
Mr. Lloyd,
no,
did you hear anything?
I didn't hear anything either. And while we're working with NTIA and FCC and the other partners, I mean, I think our concerns are your concerns. I mean, we're simply not prepared for an increased demand in coupons or some of the challenges that will come when people get these converter boxes in their home and try to connect them and can't.
Yeah. Mr. Ripperton.
Yes, sir. What I did hear was that NTIA was looking at the options of taking orders and how that would be managed. And what we would advocate strongly is that there be a allowance for taking orders, but in a method that would prohibit fraud, because that was one of the major issues that was brought up. And that's certainly, you know, we're committed to fulfilling those orders both in store and with our direct-to-you solution as a major retailer. That is, we need to satisfy our consumers' demand. So that's one of the things we need to put some guidance around how you can do that process and do it well for the consumer and your constituents.
Thank you. And I'm not sure that I was hearing it right, and of course I don't want to, again, attribute any comment, but I think Dr. McGuire-Rivera may have alluded to the additional cost to allow reapplication or reissuance. And I forget the exact number, but she said, you know, we're just not set up to do it. But if we're not moving quickly to address it, we definitely will not be set up to do it at any point in time. And it's not for us up here to the sky is falling scenario. That doesn't really help. What we like to do is to avoid the sky from falling. And I'm hoping that, as Mr. Markey indicated, that you give us some guidance. You're there on the ground. You understand what's really going on. And we monitor this, and that's what this hearing's all about. But many times it's after the fact and too late. And I just think, let's hope that time hasn't. Can I have one last question, sir? And this is a question that actually was going to be presented by the chairman of the full committee, I believe, and that is, and this to Mr. Romeo, and there was some concern that NTIA may have inadvertently issued coupons that had a 60-day expiration period. Is that true? Have you heard anything like that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that.
All right. I'll yield back.
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. Lloyd, let me come back to you. We heard Mr. Gonzalez talking about the effort that's going on in San Antonio with regard to minority stations, getting out the word. Give us your overall profile of what's going on across the country in the minority community in terms of the outreach, in terms of the penetration rate, in terms of the redemption rate compared to those who are in the white community. Is there a disparity? How big is it? And what would you recommend for us to do to close that gap?
Well, there is a disparity, and I must admit that I'm not comfortable with the research either from Nielsen or from the Consumers Union or from other sources. I am more comfortable with the GAO research than some of the other research that I've taken a look at. There is a disparity regarding minority populations and regarding folks who are poor and on fixed income, regarding confusion both about the program and about the transition and how it's going to impact them. We've also sort of seen on the ground that folks have really had some trouble going into retailers who are trying to sell them either boxes or cable service or satellite service that they don't need, rather than helping them make the transition with the over-the-air boxes that they've got. And we've also seen some folks who get these boxes and can't connect them, try to talk to retailers and the manufacturers, and the retailers don't tell them effectively how to connect them. So we're also concerned about what happens when people actually get the converter boxes. Maybe the box doesn't work, maybe they need an additional antenna, maybe they need something else. And we're not convinced that there's a mechanism in place that can really help people on the ground make that transition.
And how big of a disparity do you think it is between the minority community and the white community?
Again, so, looking at GAO's stats, I think the disparity is probably around anywhere between 5 to 10%, depending on the particular community that we're talking about, which may be significant for the African American or for the Latino community especially.
Mr. McTerr, could you again quantify the total amount of advertising being done by the broadcasting industry?
Not the entire industry, Mr. Chairman, but I can tell you that across our 38 television stations, we have ran over 40,000 spots. We have made 275 speakers bureau, so that we have sent people out to speak to various community organizations. We have ran 930 news stories. We did 60 editorials. We did 6,000 news crawls and have done 35 incidences of phone banks, whereby during our news broadcast, we asked viewers to phone in where we had staff members man phones for a period of 2 hours, doing a lot of one-on-one coaching and counseling. So that's what we have done since last April as a company.
Now, do you know Ms. Cannon?
I introduced myself to her last week.
So you're both in the Wilmington market, but you're just getting to know each other right now.
Just for the record, I actually live in Montgomery, Alabama. At the corporate office.
I see.
But we do have management in Wilmington that does know Ms. Cannon.
So, Ms. Cannon, you are working with Raycom in Wilmington?
Yeah, yes, and with all the broadcasters.
Excuse me?
With all the broadcasters.
With all the broadcasters. Yes. So do you have meetings together to plot out a general plan?
Yes, actually we had a meeting with the broadcasters and our public affairs folks and our marketing folks last week, and we have a...
Was that the first meeting?
No. No. That was just with the marketing, to bring the marketing folks into it. And then we have cross-functional meetings every single week with our entire region and our local team to move this forward.
Now, based upon your experience, would you recommend that happen in every television market in America?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're taking good notes and we're compiling a list of tactics so that when this is over in Wilmington, we can spread the word, the do's and the don'ts post-mortem to our fellow cable companies.
So, Mr. McTerr, are you encouraged by the meetings that are taking place in Wilmington between the cable and broadcast industries and other industries?
Very much so. I think that Raycom has also had conversations as we get ready with Comcast, all of Time Warner, Analogy, probably at least the top 8 MSOs to do co-marketing, co-education in all of our markets. And
so you are, in other words, you're already partnering, you're already meeting. Have you met with the top people from Comcast yourself?
Yes, sir.
You have. So it's across the entire Raycom footprint. Then you've met with the cable industry. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ripperton, what are we going to do about the non-Radio Shacks? What are we going to do about these stores that don't have, we'll say, quite either the capacity or the ethical standards of Radio Shack? What do you recommend that we do here as a committee to make sure that they respond to this consumer demand in a way that is commensurate with the challenge, that many of these families are going to be confronted with? In other words, we don't need laws for good people. We only pass laws for bad people, because the bad people don't act in a way that is consistent with overall societal goals. So what do you recommend that we do to these bad stores?
Dr. Marco Rivera.
Excuse me?
Dr. Marco Rivera addressed that they are taking those retailers that had been authorized to sell boxes. They're eliminating them as being approved by the program, and I would think that that would be the first steps that we need to go through.
But on the ground, you're there on the ground. These are your competitors across the whole country. You've got this big job, so you know who they are. So give us some other recommendations that we could implement.
You know, the strongest thing that I could recommend is that we speak through our actions, and Radio Shack is delivering, and other retailers are delivering on the consumer promise that to provide a high-quality digital experience. And if other retailers embrace similar programs such as ours on the Direct-to-You program, the stores that may be out of stock, there may be other options for them to deliver a box to a customer's home or to their supporting store. That's what we would advocate. It is certainly working for us.
For you, but what about stores that are not as focused as you are on the problem? What do we do to them?
Again, it's hard to address other companies, but I would think that there are, especially the members of CERC.
The members of?
CERC, the Consumer Electronics Retailers Coalition, that they follow suit with similar actions that we're taking in providing that consumer experience.
So would you what could you give us as a recommendation, though, that we should have, what is it called, consumers? We don't allow acronyms to be used here. So
I'm sorry, Consumer Electronics Retailers Coalition.
So it's all the stores like Radio Shack, the good stores and the bad stores. So what do you recommend be a standard adopted by the Consumer Electronic Retail Circle? What should be the standard that they're imposing upon all of the other companies so that the bad ones know that they're going to have a scarlet letter, a scarlet D on their corporate foreheads?
Well, again, if they eliminate their ability to NTIA in this,
I understand. But what can this association do as well to kind of reinforce it from a corporate perspective that this is more than just the NTIA? This is the image of the Consumer Electronic Retail. What's the final C? Coalition. I'm sorry, coalition. Yeah.
The key focus would be to remove their ability to redeem the coupon. And that would take away their ability to.
Okay. And could the Consumer Electronic Retail Coalition actually promulgate that as a standard that you recommend that they have it taken away from them?
I would advocate that the elimination of those companies to be able to redeem coupons would come from NTIA and FCC.
But it also could come from you. It could be a recommendation from your organization to the NTIA. And I think that would get the attention of the organization if they got a letter from your organization saying that all the good companies are recommending that all you bad companies out there, as yet unnamed because you have yet to respond, you have yet to demonstrate a sufficient disinterest in the program. But could you do that for us?
Sir, I would have to take that under advisement and see whether that would be something. But
what would the problem be? Why wouldn't your organization want to set a standard?
I would take that under advisement with our legal counsel to see if that's something that we could pursue. But certainly it sounds theoretically like it's something that we would take under consideration.
Okay. Could you, I don't know if you will be the witness at the next hearing, but could you tell the witness at the next hearing that they're going to be answering that question? And if your group hasn't done it by then, that I will have a different tone of voice with that witness at the time, and it will be my entire round of questions, okay? So you should just warn whoever that person is that gets the baton from you for the next group, and the organization as well will have its printed name out here so that we'll know whether or not they actually took a position. Let me turn here and recognize the gentleman from San Antonio once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ripperton, because I have a local provider, they're HEB, and they're saying they're having problems because they're only going to carry analog pass-through, and it's my understanding from your testimony that Radio Shack, I think that's the direction that y'all will be moving, is that analog pass-through capable converters are the only ones that you'll be stocking. Is that true?
Yes, sir, that's absolutely true.
All right, so that's going to be the consumer's choice, and for good reason. Do you acknowledge that there's a problem stocking a sufficient number to meet the demand under the present circumstances?
As I previously testified, the extraordinary demand for these converter boxes is certainly challenging retailer supply chains. And our solution to that, when and if we have stockouts and gaps in our inventory, that we then
No, and I want to get to that, but I just want an acknowledgement from one of the major retail providers out there, Radio Shack, because you really are one of the good guys, and I commend you and thank you very much for stepping up to the plate to help us with this, that there's a problem with supply, whether it's a smaller provider such as HEB or it's Radio Shack, which is nationwide. Now, if we continue with an expiration date, I guess what I want to get to is we better leave here today with some understanding of what direction we're going to be taking. Mr. Stupak suggested, but I believe that Dr. McGuire-Rivera said, no, we don't want to do that, and I understand it. And that is that you would simply hold the card. Charlie Gonzalez goes with the coupon. You don't have the converter box, so you just hold it. The problem with that, it's got an expiration date. I'm not sure that I want to hold that thing, because then you're charged with that responsibility. Are you supposed to return it to me before the expiration date? And if you don't, do I blame you? I mean, if I understood Congressman Stupak's suggestion, so really the only answer here is probably to somehow extend the date of expiration, allow the use. I mean, it's incredible to think that 58% did not redeem the coupon. How many of those are households that are analog only? I mean, this is incredible what we're going to be facing, and I guess I just don't understand. But I think we have uniformity here, that we need to do something about the expiration date, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. I want to thank each and every one of the witnesses. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your indulgence.
Okay, I thank the gentleman. What we're going to do, there are going to be a series of roll calls on the House floor right now. I'm going to give each one of you 1 minute to tell us what we should know at this critical juncture as we round the bend here, heading for the stretch, and give you each 1 minute to tell us what it is that you think our committee should know as we really break here for the roll calls. We'll begin with you, Mr. Rossi.
I would just say that we are going to be providing updates on a regular basis, including looking at not just what we've looked at so far, but different areas such as socioeconomic indicators and such as far as how readiness goes. So we'll be doing that over a period of time so we can trend it over time, and we think it'll be very valuable information. The other thing I would say is we do have an auditing process within our system that goes back and checks on those folks who go into the homes to see what is happening in those homes